It is necessary to purge the establishment.
What she's suggesting that churches do, a focus on...
That's not necessarily a good thing to start with.
They're stating it wasn't around when we needed the greatest generation of the 30s or 40s.
It happened before the election because there's too many Republicans that are afraid that their wrongdoings are going to...
It's unacceptable, and I'm not going to sit here, stay silent, and not call it out. I'm calling out their lies.
With rules for Thanksgiving, who the hell is he to tell us what we're supposed to do?
Do they think that we are so stupid that we will not notice and find out?
Hey, this is Josh Barnes with Point of View, where we discuss the crucial questions that you have about the critical issues of our day from a biblical worldview. We believe that to be right about issues, you're going to have to be biblical about issues. Check out Point of View every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. and every Tuesday night from 8 to 8:30 right here on Right America Media Network at ramtv.live. Join us for the next episode of Point of View and let the Bible change your perspective.
Hi, America. My name is Savannah Lynn, and I'm the host of a political commentary podcast called The Savvy Truth. If you love God, love your family, and you love this country, you can tune in at Right America Media on Facebook or at ramtv.live. This podcast airs 7 Eastern and 6 Central.
I am a raging patriot. Welcome to KSOK Uncensored. This week we are focusing on the state of Utah. Utah has been doing some amazing things lately, and they have led the pack in many areas. I'm happy to have Ethan on from Utah, where we can dive into some of those very important topics. Yesterday I had a chance to connect with Ethan for about an hour, and he had just finished up eating a burrito from a joint that we don't have here in the state of Oregon. And it made me think about how much I love burritos and a few funny stories I have to go along with that. So growing up, we would always go to this burrito joint that's mainly here in Oregon called Muchos Gracias. And actually I ended up getting a nickname Muchos Greasias because most people would go there after drinking way too much alcohol, as it's open 24/7. Probably the alcohol, not the food. Also, another burrito story, LinkedIn, one of my connections on LinkedIn posted something which was supposed to be a thoughtful message. And he said, if we did more of X, what do you think would make our community stronger? I responded with forgiving one another easier. And my ex-boyfriend writes, eat more burritos. And I thought to myself, that's why we broke up. So anyways, moving away from the burrito topic, there's some crazy stuff going on here in the state of Oregon. And actually, I was just doing some quick and dirty math, and we are trending in Portland. We are trending to increase the amount of homicides by 2,000%. So we are averaging about 2 a week right now, which is higher than anything we've ever seen. The numbers started increasing after the Portland Police Bureau was defunded. Many specialty units were removed, including the gang team. Now the Portland leaders are finding that a team like that is necessary, and they have put $2 million back into the Portland Police Bureau's funding. And they're going to have some type of gun unit team, basically what they already had and what they already got rid of. The other issue is the DA. The DA doesn't prosecute here, much like New York City. When you look at high crime, you always want to go back to how the DA prosecutes. Here, they get rid of so many cases, it's scary. And so naturally, criminals don't have that deterrent. So they're going to continue to commit crimes. Homicides, that's just, I would say, getting rid of the gang team. Most of the homicides, when my husband comes home and tells me that there's been another homicide, one, it's not a big deal to me or to him. But two, I say gang related. Now, not always, but many times they are. And it's one of those things where at this point in time, you just need to let them handle it between the gangs, in my opinion. But it's sad that we're even at that point in the first place. So moving on from what's happening concerning homicides, this is actually kind of sad, but I understand why this happened. So if the name Joanne Hardesty rings a bell for you, it's because she's an ultra liberal leader who's on the city council here in Portland, Oregon. Now, Joanne Hardesty, she is openly against the police and was calling for them to be defunded, which they were last year. But just recently, her name came into the press because someone that was involved in a hit and run named her as the suspect. Now, it was just in the police report. There wasn't anything confirmed, but that was leaked by the Portland Police Bureau Association president. That was leaked to the press. And so unfortunately, he was forced to resign after that. And I don't condone him leaking something that really didn't have any substantial evidence, but I understand why. Imagine working for leaders that don't support you and they're actually against you. It's so understandable how these police officers are at their wits' end with these worthless leaders. And actually, that brings me to a topic. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Nextdoor website or application. I don't go on very often, but once in a while, there's a subject that I just can't help but jump into. And just recently, a lot of people in my area are getting the vaccine. A lot of patriots are getting the vaccine. And so they are driving downtown Portland where the majority of them are being distributed. So what it's doing, the benefit of that for us is it's forcing these patriots outside of their comfort zone. Most of them sit here in the suburbs and they don't leave their bubble, but it's forcing them to go downtown and to witness firsthand the destruction that has taken place. So basically the article on Nextdoor that I got involved in was one of my neighbors saying how he hadn't gone downtown in over a year, and he described in great detail what he witnessed and how disgusted he is with it. It triggered over 70 comments and hundreds of likes or shares. I got involved, and of course I wanted to get involved with a political angle. So I said something to the effect of, hopefully people start realizing that elected officials that are highly leftist leaders, they don't have any plans to uphold any of the promises that they run on. And we're going to continue to see more and more of what you just witnessed downtown. I had a lot of likes. And then I continued to observe what people were saying because I was just ready to get ripped apart, right? Because anything you say that's against the left here in the Portland area, you get ripped a new one. I didn't get ripped a new one. And actually, I kept reading and I noticed that most of the people were completely disgusted. And so I said something to the effect of, okay, it looks like we all agree that what's happening in Portland is unacceptable. Now, are we all in agreement that we need to make a change concerning who we vote for? Silence, nothing. So it's just very typical. People want to complain, but they either can't allow themselves to think differently or they just won't. And that's unfortunate. So that's what I've got on Portland right now. I don't see much change because people aren't willing to have those difficult conversations. That said, let's pivot to Utah. I'd like to bring Ethan in so we can continue this discussion. Hello, my friend.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Been a good day.
All right, you have to share with us what's the name of the burrito place that you go to in Utah?
So it's Betos, so Betos.
I should have
Betos.
remembered because then I started making fun of Beto O'Rourke. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, the Irish guy that thinks he's Spanish. Nice.
Exactly.
Well, good deal. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I know we've been following each other on Instagram for quite some time, I believe since June, from the very beginning. I honestly think you were one of, like, when I only had maybe even 100 followers, I think you were one of them. So that's like really special to me. So,
well, when I first looked at it, I started watching and then started watching some more, and I started getting more interested. And so I was like, you know what? At this point, you cannot not follow, so you kind of have to follow at that point, you know.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, I want to dive into something. I know you and I discussed yesterday how important it is to uphold the Second Amendment. And I know that is your hot button. So I don't want to waste any time talking about burritos any longer. Let's dive right into the Second Amendment, why it's so important to you, steps you've taken to be heard, etc.
Right. So when it comes down to the Second Amendment, I mean, it's the Second Amendment, and when we look at that, it's there's a certain part of a passion that I have where when it comes down to being able not only to protect yourself, really across the board, right? So the meaning of the Second Amendment, when we first got the Second Amendment, when it was implemented, of course, we had a tyrannical government that we were having to deal with at that time. Nowadays, where we deal a lot more with being able to protect ourselves and our families and our friends and those around us from just honestly random people if need be. We know there's a lot of things that happen in the world nowadays that it just gets crazy where there be shootings or whatnot. And so if I didn't have Second Amendment rights, that's where it comes down to is I don't feel like I'd have the proper tools necessary to protect myself versus someone or a criminal that had something that I couldn't level out the playing field essentially.
Right, right. Yeah, I completely agree. Do you feel that if the majority of law enforcement is put in a position where they are told you need to go and collect guns, go collect arms from civilians, do you think the majority of law enforcement will do it?
I would say no.
Okay.
When it comes down to whether it be military, whether it be law enforcement, or an official or a political figure, I mean, you all take up the oath, right? And the oath is to protect essentially the Constitution of the United States against all foreign and domestic, and that's where it comes into play. Where would they break that oath to protect the Constitution and to protect the Second Amendment just by collecting guns?
Right. I know that's a tough one. Being married to a police officer, we have these conversations and I challenge him regularly. I'm like, okay, if this is you, will you do it? And of course, he knows there's consequences even in his marriage too, if he were to be an oath breaker. But no, he said no. But actually, I had someone recently that reached out to me on Instagram, someone that's been following me for quite some time, and he said he's here in Portland. He said I have 2 sheriff friends that said yes, they would if they were ordered to, they would. And he said, would your husband? And that's what triggered my new question with my husband. I was like, hold up, let me just get a pulse check here. Let me just make sure you're in the right spot. And he said, absolutely not. But it's scary to me because I do believe that there are oath breakers out there. And when I think of, I can't help but think of World War II and what happened with the Nazis. And if you think about it, a lot of them, they stand on the position, or they did. That was my job. That's what I was ordered to do. But and I do feel like there would be a bit of that here, which is frightening. But I also do feel that, unlike Venezuela, the United States patriots are not just going to hand over their arms. And actually, there are many, I hate to say militias, but there's many organizations that have vowed to never go against the U.S. Constitution, no matter what. And I think that's great. And we have to do that in order to stay free. So I love that you've taken steps towards being heard. Now, you went to the Capitol building, right?
Yeah.
Was that concerning the Second Amendment?
You're right. So this was I want to say February of last year, right before all the COVID stuff started hitting in March. Essentially, what was going on is we did end up doing a protest and a rally. There was a lot of people who came with plate carriers, a lot of guns and whatnot were involved. There was nothing wrong with that. There was no shooting that happened. There was nothing. It was very peaceful. Everyone cleaned up afterwards. But essentially, what was going on is we were protesting the red flag gun laws that our state was at that time, and that like Mitt Romney and whatnot were talking about at that time. And that's something that. I'm going to interrupt
you because I know I had to ask you what that was yesterday, and I'm sure my viewers know at least a bit. But can you explain what that is?
Yeah, essentially, it would allow for, and usually it would consist of like a family member or whatnot. saying, hey, this person, a family member has, whether it be suicidal thoughts or, they're essentially they're not mentally okay. And it would allow essentially the courts for them to send a petition to the courts and to the state and be like, hey, this person should not have guns. Okay. And then for execute that order to be able to essentially take away my guns. Now, this could even happen even if, for instance, if a family member has a grudge against me, right? And they say, hey, I'm going to actually put it in a petition against you. And then they do, and say the state comes and takes my guns. It comes down to,
oh my God.
It's
That's crazy. Because if you think about it, 50% of marriages in the United States end in divorce. And most of those are nasty, I would say. So, I mean, and then I just think of the amount of vindictive people out there. That is just a recipe for disaster. And now, are they vetting when somebody does a red flag or turns someone in, are they vetting the situation before taking the arms away? Or is it just ask questions after the fact?
Right. So I know that the person who does say, hey, this person, they have mental issues and whatnot, I know that they have to put in a petition to the courts, to the state, where it goes from there, because at least here in Utah, it never passed. Now, I don't know how other states do it, and I've heard it's based on, and it all depends upon the situation. And so in Utah, nothing ever went through with it, luckily.
Good. Yeah.
But I'm not sure how that would continue down that path. My guess is they'd probably, with the petition, they'd probably go through, they'd probably analyze what's going on. And if they felt at all that they needed to, they'd go in and take away those guns and whatnot. Even if technically, like I feel like I'm pretty, mentally sound and whatnot. I couldn't imagine someone coming in and be like, hey, we're going to have to take your guns because of ... Here's a court order.
Right. Yeah, I think of like child custody issues, and if someone's going through a divorce, I mean, I listen to Nancy Grace and I watch true crime all the time, and this stuff happens. So it's so crazy. I mean, people will do anything to win a custody battle. So I can imagine they'll be like, oh, he has 500 guns. He's, waving them around the kids. And I mean, that's not good. So I'm glad that didn't pass there. But like you said, I'm sure it has in other states. I just don't know.
I want to say there's around 17 states where it actually, I think, has already passed.
Wow.
It has passed.
I probably live in
already.
one. Who knows?
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, seriously. Oh my gosh, that's wild. So there was something, now didn't Utah pass the right to carry recently?
Yep. So I think there's also around 19 other states. We actually might be, it's in the teens, high teens somewhere. But yeah, Utah just passed, we passed a constitutional carry law, which is great. Right. I think that's a good step. Now, the sad thing is actually there's a lot of gun advocates who say that's not good. There's two sides of that spectrum. I like it. I think it's a good idea. But there's definitely two sides of that spectrum where people are saying, we don't want it to become like the wild, wild west where everyone can just conceal carry, a firearm, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think, I'm all for it, honestly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of circumstances that, I mean, I get it. We don't want it to be the Wild West, but honestly, if we think about it, the people that shouldn't have guns are the ones that get them illegally anyways. So I don't know. There's so many, ifs, ands, or buts. So I think it's a good thing. I personally feel it's a good thing. And I know here I'm waiting to get my concealed. I'm like telling my husband, I'm like, I have to open carry until I can get my concealed. And there was like a 9-month waiting list in the county I live in. And the only reason I got in early is because I pulled a few strings. You have a few people, but crazy.
Yeah, when it comes down, I would say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. I think you're going there.
Okay, I was going to say, when it comes down to the constitutional carry, and it also comes down to getting your concealed permit, even if, even though we passed this law, I think it goes into effect in May, I would still suggest, of course, for people to still get their permit, and their concealed permit. And essentially, because one, there's some really good training that comes with it, honestly, when it comes down to knowledge on where you can and can't carry and so on and so forth, that you may not know where to find that information.
Right.
Because Utah, We have a really high amount of people that actually come in from out of state to get our concealed license, and that's because the Utah concealed carry license actually covers, I think, like 30 something states overall.
Whoa, I had,
and
yeah.
It's pretty massive. And so with Utah, people will come in, they'll get the license. That way they're covered across multiple states that honor the Utah license. And if you're just constitutional carry and you don't have that concealed carry and you go out of state somewhere else, that constitutional carry doesn't carry over to that other state.
Right.
Right. It'll stay only in Utah.
Well, I'm going to come visit you and I will get that.
Oh, definitely. Come on over.
That's so smart. I had no idea. I mean, it makes sense, especially for like me. I'm in Oregon and I'm right on the top of Oregon. And so if I go into Vancouver, Washington, where half my family lives, I'm out of luck there. So yeah, no, that's good to know. I did not realize that. But you know what else Utah passed? And this was following, actually, so I believe Utah was one of the first states to pass this, and that is where they're protecting drivers involved in a some type of, I hate to say manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter, but where someone, a protester, rioter, was in their way, not allowing them to drive away, and they felt their life was in danger. It protects the driver. And I know you have a story that you want to share, and I know that I've personally listened to TikToks and Instagrams where there were people that were caught in the mix. And I know one woman in particular had her little girl in the back seat crying, and there was nothing the police could do because that area had been deemed protest area and the police were not allowed. I don't remember what state, probably Minneapolis or something, Minnesota. But in this type of instance, at least in Utah, and I know a few other states have followed, the driver would be empowered to protect their lives and whoever else is in the vehicle if they felt their life was in danger. And I would love for you to share what happened to you personally.
Right. So, so this was back when like a lot of the riots and protests started up like originally. Like there was a lot that was going on there. We were in Salt Lake City, just driving because we were doing a birthday thing up there for my wife. And we were going down some of the main streets of Salt Lake City. We were getting ready to just get home, but traffic started getting a little bit heavy in downtown and whatnot. And we're like, what is going on? I personally just had a gut feeling. And you sometimes just got to trust your gut and go with what you feel. So I was like, you know what? I did a U-turn, took a bunch of side roads, eventually got to where our daughter was outside the city a little bit. Then I started looking up, what's going on in Salt Lake, because there was something going on. And right where we were in that general area, there was a lot of, that's actually where one of the police officers' cars was actually flipped over and people started getting on top of it. And all the riots actually started going on. And so it comes down to, I 100% agree with what you're saying, is that drivers need to be protected. I mean, when we see a lot of the riots that are going on where, they're smashing people's windows, hitting their cars and whatnot, that's not, even pulling out guns, and we've seen that before too. Even down in Provo, around the same time when all the riots were going on, that happened. Someone pulled a gun on a driver and that driver drove way off. And it's a scary thing. And you just have to kind of be alert. And that's one of the keys. Like when you're in this day and age, of course, and you're going through these different things, you really need to be alert and observant on what's going on in the area and trust your gut. Honestly, just trust your gut. If it says get out of there, it's probably accurate and you probably need to get out of there.
Do we have a few questions out there? I think we have time for 2 or 3, maybe 2, maybe 1. All right. Is that a no? No questions? Oh, people, you have failed me. No, that's all right though. Well, Ethan, remember when I was joking and I was saying that I was going to put Mormon under the caption?
Yeah.
I was totally kidding, but I don't know if that made it across. So that did appear up there. So
it's all good. No worries about them.
I was kidding with Juan and he did it. So
all good.
I'm like watching his reaction now. Anyways, so I know we ran pretty close to the end of the show. I'm like, sorry. Every time that popped up, I was smirking and I was hoping I could hold it together. But when it popped up again, oh, I couldn't help myself. But yeah, so I would love to hear on that topic. Tell me the church's stance on politics.
Right. So, and oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I said I only have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll be as quick as possible. A 30-second version, right? When it comes down to the church, we have our prophets and apostles and whatnot. The leadership, and our leadership doesn't ever tell us you need to vote for this person. Like during the election process, they're not like you need to vote for Trump or you need to vote for Biden. That's not a thing. What they honestly tell us to do is ponder about it, pray about it. Look up the information for yourself, think about it, and go in and make the best decision of what you think is best. It is your duty to make sure that you're voting for who you think is going to be best, whether it be state or federal. And so they have that standpoint where you have your personal free agency to make that choice, and they're not going to push you either way to who to choose for. So that's kind of the church's standpoint on that.
Here, because I know Mitt Romney, he's not in a good place now with the conservatives, so it's nice to hear that he's not being pushed on people that are within the LDS community. So no, that's good to know. Well,
just one question.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and it's been really fun to have you on here. And any last words? We have like 30 seconds.
I'm just glad to be on the show. Thankfully you asked me. I think there's a lot of things going on in the world, whether it be across the entire United States or even in Utah, that are happening, and some are for good, and some, of course, as we know, on a federal level, there's a lot of things that are going on with gun laws that are really hard. So I'm just hoping everything turns out for the best, and all we can do is really push to keep what we know true, safe. So.
Excellent. Well, I completely agree. And I need to have you on again. I think we should do a Second Amendment segment and really dive in a little deeper, because I think that's something that people really need to understand why it's so important. So, well, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful night, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to KSOK Uncensored Utah. And I just want to say they may be woke, but we're awake. Stay tuned. We have Keith Sanders. He goes by My 2 Cents or 2 Cent. And he's going to be coming in here in just a moment. Here we are.
There I am. So I was ready to start off and say, I don't have a bone to pick with you. I have missed you so much. And then you said my call sign was here's my 2 cents, and it's over, KSOK. We're right back to normal. It's over.
It's over? Nice.
I want to be friends with you so bad. Let's go back to the good stuff. So my call sign is 2 cent. And you said, here's my 2 cents. That's the name of the show. We're going to get there. Juan is the problem. It's Juan. It's clearly Juan.
Then he puts here's my 2 cents.
So here's my 2 cents is the show. Juan, get your stuff together, buddy. Get your life together.
Well, actually, now
please.
That you say it again. No, it's probably my fault. 2 cents.
No, it's definitely not. Definitely not. Now, I do want to say I missed you terribly last week. I had to record it a day ahead of time. I had conflicts, and so did Juan. How did it go for you last week? Was it a good show?
It was good. Yeah, I had a fellow police wife on, so that was nice to be able to relate to each other. And even though she's in California and I'm here in Oregon, we have so many commonalities happening. So that was it was a different show. It was like talking to a girlfriend.
That's awesome. I bet it was very natural. Yeah. I'm going to go back and take a look. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see it. That could be your bone to pick with me. How about that?
All right. Yeah, that can be my bone. Sounds good.
All right. It was great to talk to you again.
Look into your strength finders.
I'll take a look at it for no reason at all.
Have a great show.
All right. Thanks a lot, KSOK. For those of you that are sticking around, It's your boy, Keith 2 Cent Sanders. Stick around. I'll be hosting this week's episode of Here's My 2 Cents with me, Keith 2 Cent Sanders.
Hello, America. I am Savannah Lynn from The Savvy Truth on Right America Media, and I'm here to remind you that Right America Media has a plethora of other shows, like Council of Colonels, Point of View with Josh and Justin Barnes, KSOK Uncensored, our blue state conservative. Here's My 2 Cents with Keith Sanders, our Air Force veteran, and the newest addition to our family, The Loaded Mic with Danny Wuss. And don't forget, this is on every Tuesday and Thursday, so if you love God, love your family, and you love this country, you better be there.
The Second Amendment is a priority at the Loaded Mic. If we don't defend the right to keep and bear arms, there are people who are happy to violate it. The strategies and tactics of the anti-gun crowd and politicians are sinister. We need to understand those tactics. I wrote the Good Gun, Bad Guy book series as the rule book to their evil game, so we can understand their strategies and motives to defeat them. Understand the mindset of the anti-gunner in Book 1. Learn the media strategies behind the gun grab in Book 2, and understand the politics behind their mission in Book 3. Go to goodgunbadguy.com.
Welcome to this episode of Here's My 2 Cents with me, your host, Keith 2 Cent Sanders. Great job there, Juan. Great job. I'm going to talk about you here in a minute. You're not getting away free today. Definitely not getting away free today. We have had one heck of a week. We have a lot to talk about. Right now, we're live all over the place. We're live on Facebook, live on YouTube, live on ramtv.live, live right here behind the scenes on my TikTok at 2CentKSJ. If you are not following, you need to follow. If you're not following over here, I want to see you guys there as well. Like I said, crazy week. Every time I get done with my shows, I think, I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. And then they just supply, and they just give. There's always more and more to talk about. I find that over the weekend, not too much going on. Usually they kind of take things a little easy for me. And then as the week starts to heat up, more and more topics. And then I find myself frantically going through what I want to talk about right before the show. And I try to get it all condensed down. The hits just kept on coming all week. So for those of you who didn't know, last week we had to record early and I wasn't able to go live. I had a lot of people over here who were saying, where are you? I want to watch you live over here. I apologize if you guys missed it. For those of you that follow me over here, or if you're finding this on YouTube, you can also find it on YouTube at Here's My 2 Cents, by the way. I'll get this all chopped up for you, edited nice, and I'll give you a good product. We go live. I'm live right now. I've been told when I go live, I have a little more energy. That's probably true. It's a little hard when you're in a room by yourself talking to a camera, but I know all of you are here with me, and I really enjoy everyone who has come along. I had to do it all by myself last week. All by my lonesome. Just me. Juan, I missed you, buddy. I really, really missed you. I'm going to go back to my view of you. Juan, I missed you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Without you, Juan, I was lost. I was up all night, not only doing a lot of editing, but crying because I was tired and I needed you so badly. And I'm so glad you're here. Thank you very much, Juan. You do not get by easy with me around here. I'm so glad to be live again. It's so much better. I have so much more fun. If you are finding us on YouTube, please give us that like and the share and all the goodies and push all the buttons. If you're on Facebook with us, please go ahead and interact. If you're over here live with me on TikTok, hop on over to Facebook, Right America Media on Facebook. You can interact with me there, or you can stay right here. Okay. All jokes and lovey-dovey and all that stuff aside. And by the way, I'm going to try to be a little more positive today. They make it so hard for me to be positive, but I'm going to do everything I can to be positive. Jokes aside, we got to talk about the media of this week. The media insert themselves into the Atlanta shooting. Biden makes a rare appearance on TV where he, of course, gets preferential treatment. The media continue to lie for Joe in the aftermath of an actual interview that he conducted. And the crisis, which it is a crisis, continues to get worse by the day. And our lovely friends in the media, largely silent. With all of that being said, Here's my 2 cents on the media is gross. Sorry, not sorry. I'm serious. Sorry, not sorry. I try to come up with cool, catchy topics for the week, and this one just kept coming up to me over and over, and it seems too easy. It seems too cliche. It seems that I could actually do this one every single week, and I'm going to try not to. I'm not a media critic, right? I'm not a media critic. I consume the media. I know the immense influence the media has on our entire society. Look no further than any election, how they cover someone, if they cover someone, what is presented, more importantly, what isn't presented, and the huge effect that the media has. So of course I'm interested. And this week in particular, they really stood out to me. So again, sorry, not sorry. It seems a little easy to say, hey, the media is gross, but that's where we're going this week. And you're going to see they made it super, super easy. And by the way, I'm technically in the media. I have press credentials when I go to things. I'm kind of a big deal. Name the movie. I won't tell you the movie. Name the movie. I'm kind of a big deal. People know me. All right, so this media, I'm a little hyped this week. We got to go live again. The media and their coverage of Joe Biden. And of course, by contrast, the media and their coverage of Donald J. Trump. Sometimes I talk about naivete, big word number 1 of the day, when we were talking about Trump and us sending him there to DC to be the disruptor and to toss over the tables and to drain the swamp. I had mentioned then that we were a little naive to think that the swamp would not fight back. Then, of course, lo and behold, after the election, and no, I'm not talking about widespread voter fraud. Don't turn me in. I'm not saying any of that stuff. After the election, Time Magazine wrote an article, which we talked about on this show. Go back in my library if you found me on YouTube, where they said that a cabal of very rich and powerful people came together to affect the election. This is true. Time Magazine said it, not me. I bring this up because I think at the time, me personally, I was a little naive to the idea that we sent Donald J. Trump to DC to drain the swamp. Why didn't we think that the swamp would fight back? I think we're in a similar situation now. Trump has left the White House. I think we all knew to some degree that the media, of course, was going to back down. They weren't going to be in there yelling and screaming at whoever was going to be press secretary. There wasn't going to be Jim Acosta and everyone else in there trying to emulate Jim Acosta, where they continuously keep shouting the same question over and over, where they continue to interrupt, where they continue to debate rather than actually interrogate, which would be their position. They are there to find information, not present information. I think we were a little naive in the sense, at least I was personally, maybe you weren't, that they wouldn't go so far as to cover for this administration, because there's nothing that they won't warp. There's nothing that they can't insert themselves into. And from that idea of what they can insert themselves into, look no further than what happened in the Atlanta shooting. There was a shooting in Atlanta. A person, and I'm not going to say who it was because I subscribe to what other people have decided to do, which is to say, don't give them the attention. We're not going to name them by name. They're not getting any attention. This show's too big. We reach far too many people for this guy to get any attention off of us. He went into massage parlors and he shot people and killed them. That's all factually correct. However, the media being the media, they can't report a story. They have to insert themselves into the story. So right off the bat, what is their number 1 topic? Race. Race has to be injected into everything. There is nothing that happens, according to them, that is not related to race. Today on CNN, I'm looking at it right now. You can go up and pull it up yourself. They had a headline that said, white supremacy and hate are haunting Asian Americans. And then the subcontext below that, it's immaterial whether the accused killer in the Atlanta spa shootings admits to a racist motivation. Asian Americans have been living in fear for months. So it is absolutely immaterial if it's true or not. We have told you it is true. Listen to us. We don't need an investigation. We don't need to let the police do their job. We don't need to have due process. We're telling you what it is. We're going to give you all the information you need. And then to make it better, we're going to give you the lens. We're going to tell you how it needs to look. And I'm going to get into that a little later. When you hear them say the term that needs context, that means, let me clarify for you. I'm going to give you the lens through which you need to look at this topic. We'll get into that later when I get into their, I told you I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to do air quotes. I'm not trying not to do it. When they go into fact checking. Everything that they do is super gross. And I'm saying it like that for a reason, because it's super gross. Everything is race. Everything is race, race, race. And then on top of that, everything is hate, hate, hate. There is so much hate spewed from those in the media. And I'm looking directly at you, Joy Reid of MSNBC, who has said that conservatives would give up every tax cut in the world to be able to say the worst word. I'm not even going to do that abbreviation that people normally do where they say the first letter. I'm not even going to do that because it's a really gross word. That being said, Joy Reid has said that conservatives would give up all the tax cuts in the world to say that word. Now, presumably, you're not talking about the minorities that would be called that name, right? So you're talking to a certain group. Forgive me if I assume that you're talking to me, because wouldn't that be the person that would want to say that word and give up their tax cuts? It's gross. It's hateful. And everything is about race. As I mentioned, they said it's immaterial. However, in spite of the sheriff saying that is not known at this point. The killer has not admitted to that. The killer has said he did what he did because of an addiction to sex. These are the things we know right now. Is he telling the truth? I don't know. I know there's going to be an investigation. I know the police are going to find what happened, but as of right now, it is not being reported that it is a hate crime. They're looking into it. There is an active and open investigation, but there is no reason to rush to judgment here. This divide in the country that we all know exists is not going to go away or get better if we continue to do things like this. If we interject race into something that we don't know has anything to do with race, you're going to continue to divide people. People are going to run with this well after it's over if it's proven true or disproven. Let's go with the example that it's disproven. You had these headlines where people are going to continue to go back and cite as if it was real. Because the coverage, this is all hypothetical, should it turn out that it was not race-related, and again, I do not know that, but should it turn out that it was not race-related, there's not going to be front page news. There's not going to be top of the line headlines that say it wasn't, but there was top of the page headlines that it was race-related. So you're not going to get the same treatment on the other side. That's the media interjecting that. I know that our president right now, and I can say he's our president, it's the case. I'm not going to do what the left did where they said, not my president. Joe Biden's the president. That's the way it is, and that's the way going forward. Joe Biden's going to get a little respect out of me today. Juan, if you could, please play for me cut 7. Let's hear what Joe Biden had to say about it.
Investigation is ongoing, and the question of motivation is still to be determined. But whatever the motivation here, I know that Asian Americans are in very concerned, but I'm making no connection at this moment to the motivation of the killer. I'm waiting for an answer from, as the investigation proceeds, from the FBI.
Okay, respect, Joe. Respect. Your old boss is losing his mind right now. Obama consistently weighed in on what he perceived to be race-motivated crimes. So kudos to you, Joe Biden. Kudos to you. That is the correct way for anyone to conduct themselves in that position. That is the correct way for any citizen to conduct themselves. We don't know. We don't know. And it is okay to accept and to acknowledge, I do not know what I do not know. There is due process. There is an investigation, both of which are going to happen, and then they will make known to us the findings. And then the person goes to court, and then they are judged by a jury of their peers. Crazy, I know. So kudos to you, Joe. Well done. Back to your old boss, because I can't skip an opportunity to compare you to what has previously happened, your old boss, Obama, if you all forget, he certainly injected himself into the Trayvon Martin case, where he had said, had I had a son, he'd look a lot like Trayvon Martin. Wow, do you think that influenced people at all? When he talked about what happened with the Cambridge police, which turned out to not be accurate, do you think that had anything to do with it? And other crimes that Obama perceived to be race-related. But I'd be a hypocrite. Joe, well done. Kudos to you, Joe. This investigation has to play out. We have to have due process, as I've said before. That was a rare question and answer from one President Joe Biden. He has had, I think, 56 days, maybe more at this point, of being president, no State of the Union address, and he's setting a record for no press conferences. Now, captain of the debate team, girl next door, Jen Psaki. I mentioned how in the previous episode of Here's My Two Cents, which you guys can find on YouTube, Here's My Two Cents, how she wanted to tout that the president had conducted some 40 question and answer sessions. Go back and take a look at that video. You're going to see that a question and answer session, according to Jen Psaki, is people yelling questions at Joe and Joe not necessarily comprehending and answering back. I'm back to giving digs. It's what happens around here. I'm at least honest about it. Other than this crime, Joe has been talking about some other topics. Of course, Joe has been talking about the bestest relief bill that has ever or will ever be passed. He is lifting people out of poverty all by himself. Papa Joe reached right into his pocket. He moved his Werther's Original to the side. He's just dishing out money. Or I think it was the Post had said was showering people with money. First of all, why are we acting like it's March 2020? It is March 2021, which is to say people are not holed up in their house with every business is boarded and shut. People are working. States are open or opening. Why are we acting like it's March of 2020? Right now, according to the Brookings Institute, the unemployment's at 6.3% nationally. And if you're an open state, you're less than 5%. Both of those numbers over Obama would have been amazing numbers. But here, we need to spend $1.9 trillion. And we need to just dish money out and shove it into people's pockets. Another topic that Joe is talking about is the crisis at the border. But of course, it's not a crisis. And obviously, like I was talking about live on TikTok before we went live here, it's also not his fault. Let's go back to the former on this one, on the tax cuts. Juan, could you please play for me cut 3? Let's hear what Biden has to say about his tax cuts.
More of my interview with President Biden. He has not done many interviews since he took office, so we did cover a lot of ground, including what's next on his agenda. In the face of Republican opposition on things like voting rights and tax increases on the wealthy, the president vowed to change the filibuster. We also talked about Vice President Kamala Harris and, of course, his rescue dog, Major. You're out here selling your COVID relief package. You're executing the COVID relief package now as well. What's next on your legislative agenda?
If you notice the criticism of the COVID relief package from my Republican friends is they say it spends too much money and it gives too many tax breaks. All these tax breaks go to the bottom 60% of the population. And guess what? They need it. The $1,400 check, child care tax credit. They don't like it because, in fact, their idea of a tax cut is to give the Trump tax cut where 83% went to the top 1% of the people in America.
You're going to be raising those taxes.
Yes, anybody making more than $400,000 will see a small to a significant tax increase.
Sorry about that. So excited. Tax cuts. Tax cuts? Did anyone know there were tax cuts in the relief bill? I didn't. I've been going so far out of my way over these last couple weeks to find out what is in this. Never had I heard tax cuts. There's a lot to unpack in there. Let's get to tax cuts in a second. Stephanopoulos is the interviewer there. Let's give a little backstory on George Stephanopoulos. He made his way up under who? Bill Clinton. He worked for Bill Clinton back in the early 90s when Bill was running for president. That's how he came up. He has donated tens and tens of $1,000s to Hillary Clinton in her senatorial and her presidential bids. He's a hack. He's an absolute hack. You can see it in the lead up to his interview. He's almost joyous. He's giddy. And of course, we have to talk about the rescue dog, Major. Who cares about the rescue dog, Major? Why? Not why. I know the answer. We're giving this preferential puff piece. Look at Papa Joe. He's so nice. He's here to help all of you. Then you see him sycophantically say, you're going to raise those taxes, right? Can you be objective at all? Again, I know the answer to that one. Can we please be objective at all about anything? Instead, we get downright propaganda, a piece and a place, and you're going to see more of this coming up soon, for Biden to say whatever he wants with no pushback whatsoever. He's going to get a tiny bit of pushback here in a little bit, and then, of course, he's just going to get all the leeway that he wants. Too easy to do, but we have to do it anyway. Switch that for Trump. This is how the lead-in would have happened. This is what it would have been. Embroiled president clamors to gain support for bill deemed too expensive. Right? Isn't that exactly the same situation that's going on? But instead you have Stephanopoulos giddy, joyfully proclaiming that it's a great bill for the people and Joe Biden's a great person. But had it been Trump, it would have been embroiled president clamors to gain support for bill deemed too expensive. They always have to interject, which is why I implore you. I ask you as nicely as I can. We're here to give you another point of view. We're here to give you a point of view from the right. Everything you see, and it worries me because this is happening to my children. I have teenage children. Everything they see, hear, touch, look at has a leftist point of view. Please, I implore you in every episode that I do, seek out the smaller outlets from regular people. I don't have anyone pushing what I'm saying, what I can and what I can't say. I do self-police. I do self-regulate because I want to stay up. I'm nervous about a lot of things that I say. I talk around things a lot, but that's so I can continue to stay on and talk with you folks. Now, he mentioned how the Republican friends of his said that he's spending too much. Yes, on BS portions of this bill. Let's go over some of them. I went over them last week. Why not take an opportunity to do it again? Real quick, let's do the rundown. Rapid fire. $270 million for the National Endowment of the Arts. That's going to stop the spread. $200 million for the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Probably going to help with research. $91 million for outreach to student loan borrowers. That's going to help get PPE into the hands of those who need it. $50 million for environmental justice. $570 million for 15 weeks of paid federal leave. Anybody here want 15 weeks off? Can't have it. You're not a federal employee. $126 billion for schools to open, even if they remain closed. $350 billion for state and local government. How does any of that have anything to do with COVID? This goes into a story I've mentioned in the past. Let's say I pass a bill where everyone gets $1 million. But part of that bill is you have to drown a puppy. Well, I'm going to vote against that. You're going to vote against that, right? Nobody wants anybody to drown a puppy. But then they get to go on and say, you don't want people to have $1 million. No, I don't want people to drown puppies. They pack these all in together. So that way, when you say no to it overall, they pick out the part that could be good for people and say, you're against that. You're against everyone, in my example, getting $1 million. So he gets to go on TV where he gets no pushback. Stephanopoulos isn't going to push back against him and say, hold on a second, aren't your Republicans' friends actually pushing against $270 million for the National Endowment of the Arts and so on? He's not going to get that. He's going to get all that preferential treatment that we've been talking about. And I mentioned tax cuts. Let's get back to the tax cuts. Let's get back to these tax cuts. I had to look into this. I had to really spend a lot of time. Tax cuts? What tax cuts? What tax cuts? There's actually provisions in there to raise taxes later. What tax cuts? Here's what they're doing. They have decided to not tax you on the increased federal unemployment insurance. Normally, when you go on unemployment, you get money from the state. But seeing as it was basically the federal government which shut down the whole country, they had originally added $600 a week where people were making more money sitting at home than they were at their jobs. Then it was reduced, I believe, to $300 and then back up to $400. So they have decided on the left, we're not going to tax you on your government money. How is that a tax cut? They are so good with language, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. You're going to see where that comes into play. They are so good with language. By no means is that a tax cut. You're not taxing government money that I give you. If that's a tax cut, please let me know. I don't understand how giving government money and then taxing the government money and then choosing not to tax it, it's so confusing. It's so confusing right off the bat. this is what's called conflation. So conflation is where you start mixing up multiple pieces of information in order to make the points that you want. He talks about 60% of the cuts going to lower income. Later on, that's going to be shown to be a mistake in how that has been presented in a fact check. So 60% of these cuts that we're talking about, no kidding, Joe, no kidding. They're going to the people at the bottom that you are keeping from going to work, Joe. Of course, that's who it's going to go to. Then he mentions how Trump cuts that went to 83% of the money went to the top. There's that conflation I'm talking about. The top 1% pay 90% of the income tax. Look it up. It's factual. So when you apply a tax cut, of course, the majority of the money that got cut is cut from the people at the top. But you got a tax cut as well. You're not paying as much tax at the beginning. So how can you possibly get as much cut as the people who are paying vastly more than you? There's your conflation. He talks about 60%. We use percentages specifically. 60% of his cuts are going towards the number of people. 83% of the money is going to a different group of people. It's conflation. We use the same terminology because they want to confuse people. And of course, they're very good at it. This is obviously on purpose. And like I said, they're very, very good at it. There's a saying I like to say, and I said it to one of my children recently, and I say it often because she was embattled in a political debate of her own, and I highly encourage her to do that. Incredibly intelligent, and I'm really proud of her for standing up for herself. She had said that some statistics were thrown at her, and I said, you need to listen to this. There are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics. You can find a statistic to say anything that you want. You truly can. Where your statistic came from, how it's being applied are always extremely important. I want to get back to that hard-hitting interview. Joe Biden was asked about bipartisanship because you'll remember, this is Mr. Unity. Stood up there on January 20th and said he was going to go for unity. Unity. I can't always be nice to Joe. I was nice earlier. Juan, can you please play for me cut 4?
Get a single Republican vote for tax cuts. How are you going to get a Republican vote for a tax increase?
Oh, I may not get but I'll get the Democratic votes for a tax increase. If we just took the tax rate back to what it was when Bush was president, top rate paid 39.6% in federal taxes. That would raise $230 billion. Yet they're complaining because I'm providing a tax credit for child care for the poor, for the middle class.
Ooh, no bipartisanship necessary, Joe? There's even more to unpack, and that's from the same interview. Just a small little snippet there. A lot more. You don't need any Republican votes, right, Joe? You don't need it. There goes Mr. Unity himself. Mr. Unity himself strikes again. Awesome, Joe. Awesome. Let's talk about that providing a child care tax credit, I think is what he was calling it. That, folks, is universal basic income. That is a test bed for universal basic income. They're calling it a tax credit that you get monthly. And then again, by the use of language, they're telling you it's to help people rather than give them the lump sum at the end. Well, the lump sum at the end would be when it's a tax credit, not giving money along the way and stuffing it into their pockets. It's going to last for a year. It came out of the COVID relief bill. If you didn't know that, that's for a reason. This is universal basic income. This is a redistribution of wealth, and they're going to have to raise taxes for it, even though he's somehow talking about cutting these taxes. He also wants to talk about how he's providing this to people. Got to tell you, Joe, you don't provide squat. You provide nothing. The American people provide that money. The American people also provide you with the consent to govern them, Joe. All of your power comes from the American people, and you're going to sit there as self-righteous as you were in that moment and say you're providing it. You provide me nothing. This goes into the fundamental difference of how Republicans and Democrats look at government. Republicans look at government and say that our rights pre-exist government, and it is the job of the government to protect my rights. Democrats believe that the government provides you with those rights. But as is the case in anything with the government, whatever the government giveth, the government can certainly taketh away. So why wouldn't you want to approach your government from a Republican standpoint? Why wouldn't you look at your government and say, you don't give me rights? You don't give me anything, Joe Biden, Joseph R. Biden. You give me nothing. You give me nothing. You provide protection to your citizens through a consent to govern us. You're not even allowed to govern without us saying you can govern, Joe. You provide us nothing. There's nothing there for it. Let's talk more about how he doesn't have to work with Republicans. There's something in the Senate, and we're going to get a little bit more into the Senate. Sorry, it's going to be a little bit of a civics lesson, but I think people need to understand this a little bit more. There are two chambers of the Congress, the House of Representatives, which is a representative body of population. The more your population you have, the more representation you have in the House. That is so a state like California, which has millions and millions and millions more people than the state of Vermont, has more representation at the federal government. That makes sense. But then Vermont says, hold on a second, I'm a state too. Why don't I get equal representation? That's where the Senate comes into play. That's why every state, regardless of your population, gets 2 senators. So Vermont has an equal say in the Senate as California. And California, because they have more population, a greater population than Vermont, they get a greater say there. I wanted to tell you that because we're going to get into a little bit of some word games of why people are trying to end what's called the filibuster. So what is the filibuster? The Democrats are going to tell you it's a way for Republicans to keep legislation from passing. Joe Biden will basically say the same thing if I can paraphrase him. The filibuster is a way to ensure that there are at least 60 votes in the Senate. Now remember, 50 states times 2 senators, 100 possible total votes. Right now, we're sitting at a 50-50. If they land on a 50-50, then you would have a tiebreaker from Kamala Harris. But 2 cent, you just said you need 60. Yes, we were able to use the 50-50 for this budget that they just passed, essentially this omnibus bill that they're calling a relief plan. When you're trying to pass laws that are normally applied that have nothing to do with budget, you have to get your 60 votes. They want to get rid of this because they know with 51 votes, they can do anything they want. They want to get rid of the filibuster, which would then effectively get rid of all bipartisanship. Bipartisanship is where it doesn't matter what side you're on, you have to get help from the other side in order to pass legislation. But in that case, you have to have give and take, and God forbid, you move towards the middle. And again, the Senate is not a representative body of the population. It is a representative body of the states as a whole. I want to introduce you to a fine American named Stacey Abrams. Who is she? A failed gubernatorial candidate from Georgia and now a media darling. She has a piece right now on CNN decrying the Senate filibuster as, let's just say, a word that begins with R and is less than American. Maybe even call it un-American. I want to pull this up for you. And I gave you the backdrop on purpose because I want you guys to come along with me. If I can get this to come up. Hold on a second. We got it now. Let me pull this up for you. Stacey Abrams writes in CNN today, the disparity between who is heard and who speaks matters. I agree with you. The 50 senators who moved this bill, the COVID relief bill, the 50 senators who moved this bill forward represent 41.5 million more Americans than the 50 senators who opposed it. Think about that. We just talked about that. We just talked about that it doesn't matter your population in the Senate. So why does she bring it up here? Because she's relying on people to not know the difference. I have seen this argument before when the Republicans held a majority, that they had a majority in the Senate despite representing less people. Who cares? You have another body for that. It's called the Great Compromise, actually, when they set it up. They knew the Congress as a singular body had too much power. They broke it into 2. States with greater population got more in the House of Representatives. Every state got equal representation in the Senate. Stacey Abrams is hoping that you don't know that, but we're a smart audience here. We know this. She's relying on people who watch CNN to not know the difference. She's bringing up a non sequitur, something that has absolutely, so many big words today, something that has absolutely nothing to do with the Senate. She wants to turn the Senate into a representative body of the population. Stacey, you already have one. You already have one. It's in the Constitution. It's called the House of Representatives. But here she is on CNN telling us that the Senate, the senators who represent 41.5 million fewer Americans shouldn't have a say. Well, they didn't when it was in the House of Representatives. So she wants to take advantage of people's lack of understanding. All right, so with that diatribe out of the way, let's see some of my more favorite questions from that interview. I told you we were going to get back to it. Juan, if you could, please play for me cut 5.
You probably walked into the Oval Office as president with about as much experience, if not more experience, than any other president who's ever served. More than 3 decades in the Senate, 8 years as vice president. So what is it about the job that surprised you, that even you didn't know?
Sorry about that, guys. I got excited. I'm talking over here on the side. The answer is who cares? Sorry about that. I'll do better next time. The answer is who cares? What a stupid question. What about it surprised you? What didn't surprise you? Who cares? You go on, you give him, you basically tell us his resume and why he's a great pick. Thank you, George, for that. Thank you for giving me the reasons that he should be president. This is an absolute BS fluff piece, a fluff question that's designed to make Joe look like a nice guy. Joe's a nice guy. Joe's a nice guy. George Stephanopoulos let us know that. George is a nice guy. Biden made a rare appearance. Biden actually answered some questions. So our friends at CNN, I'm picking on them tonight, our friends at CNN have to do a fact check because facts first. I hate to pick on them, but they're gross. And tonight's topic is the media is gross. So again, sorry, not sorry, they're discussing. So what happens when you give an actual interview? You have to say things. Now, what happens when you say something that's not correct? Well, that's a lie. That's one of Trump's 15 billion trillion lies. He said it was large, it was big. He said it was small, it was tiny. These are lies. He's lying to us. Not when Biden does it. When I told you this earlier, I said we get back to it. When Biden does it, that is a mistake. Let's go back to our friends at CNN and see what their fact checking told us. This is out of today. They're fact checking. Let's see who wrote this one. By Mr. Daniel Dale on CNN to give you the proper credit. And yes, I assumed your pronouns, Mr. Daniel Dale. President Joe Biden set for an interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos on Tuesday. Biden was generally factual in the interview, much of which aired on Wednesday, but he had 3 statistical errors. Oh, so he was generally factual. Big difference than he lied about some information. But let's go ahead and set that tone for you. I will give you the lens. He goes on to say the context around 2 of these inaccurate claims suggests that he may have had slips rather than purposeful lies. So there's that term again, the context. I'm going to give you the information that I want you to have. Then I will tell you how you need to see it. There's the lens. I want you to look through at the thing I want you to see. I want you to see it the way I want you to see. Then he goes on to assign motive because he can read the president's mind. This man should be getting paid a lot more money. He can read minds. This man knew another man's intent. I've assumed both your genders. This man knew another man's intent and could assign it correctly. He goes on to say, on the 3rd claim regarding the history of the Senate filibuster, Biden explicitly told Stephanopoulos that he didn't think the numbers he was using were right. So that makes it okay. No problems. He said he didn't think it was right anyway, so you can't blame him for it. You just can't blame him for it. He hits one. I don't want to do a full article read here, but this one I really like. Biden touting the tax benefits of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan pandemic relief law that he signed last week. He said 60% of all these tax breaks, and I showed you this earlier, go to the bottom. Facts first, they tell us. Biden stumbled his way into inaccuracy here. He didn't mean to do it. He wasn't given these statistics and told to say it a certain way. Again, he can assign motive. He stumbled his way into it. When CNN asked where Biden got this figure, the White House said that Biden was referring to a figure from the Tax Policy Center, but the Tax Policy Center's senior fellow, Mr. Gleckman, explained to CNN that the center actually found that it was 67.4% from the year before it would go to the bottom 60%. Not all of the benefits go to the bottom 60%. There's a lot more of that. I would hate to give the click to CNN, but you can see it over there. They just continue to assign context and then give you the lens through which to see it. So you know what they want you to know, of course. We did a lot of talking about Joe tonight. I did give him some credit. I was pretty nice to him. I think I was pretty fair to Joe tonight. Man, when he actually gets out there and starts answering questions potentially, he's just I'm going to eat it up. I'm going to eat it up. I'm going to be so excited. We started a weekly topic last week. I think we were ahead of the curve here. I know other people are starting to cover it as well, but I'm always forward looking. I'm always forward leaning. The crisis at the border, and it truly is a crisis at the border. This isn't a problem. This isn't a surge. This is a crisis at the border. Let's start off with the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. I hope I said his name correctly. Juan, I want to hear what the Department of Homeland Security has to say about whether or not it's a crisis. Please play for me cut one.
The facts we've set out, and I appreciate your candor. And you said earlier in your testimony that the situation at the border is undoubtedly difficult. Well, given the tremendous rise and surge of individuals coming to the border, wouldn't it be fair to call it a crisis? Because that's what your agents are calling it.
Mr. Ranking Member, first of all, if I may, I didn't necessarily agree with all the statistics that you cited. Mr. Ranking Member, I'm not spending any time on the language that we use. I am spending time on operational response to the situation at the border.
Not spending time on language. That's all you do. That's all Dems do. You know, the stimulus package, there was more bailouts to blue states, blue cities, and donors. That wasn't a stimulus package. It was an omnibus spending bill. But language is important. The For the People Act, HR 1, which we're going to get more into. Stick around next week. We have to get into that one. The For the People Act, it's called, which is to essentially centralize federal voting. That's anything but for the people. Language is important. Border crisis. Border crisis. Trump talked about Islamic extremists, Islamic extremism when he came in, because it's important to address the actual problem. If you do not address the actual problem, how can you combat the problem? Let me give you an example. My grass is dead, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm terrible with my grass. My grass is dead in my yard. I keep running the water. I add fertilizer. I aerate the whole nine. I do everything I can to bring this grass back. The grass is dead is not the problem. The problem is actually I have a broken irrigation system. My broken irrigation system floods the ground. If I continue to address dead grass with fertilizer and running my irrigation system more, I'm not actually fixing the problem. That is why addressing and naming the problem correctly is important. If I continue to address dead grass, I'm not fixing the problem of broken sprinkler. This is why language is important. I want to take a look at what's going on at the border, not through the eyes of CNN, not through the eyes of Biden, the governor of Texas. I want to hear what's going on down there. Please, Juan, play for me cut 2. Let's hear from the governor.
Let me begin with this. Across the street from where we gather today at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center is where the Biden administration is preparing to house up to 3,000 unaccompanied minors who cross the border. Similar sites exist in Carrizo Springs, Texas, as well as Midland, Texas, and that's just as of now. The way that we see the number of unaccompanied minors crossing the border, there's every reason for Americans to expect the number and size of those sites to continue to increase in the coming days. These sites are a direct result of President Biden's reckless open border policies that are causing a surge in border crossings and cartel activity. More than 11,000 minors have been apprehended crossing the border into Texas. Children crossing the border rose 60% from January to February to more than 9,400 in February. The number of migrants crossing the border is at the highest since March 2019 and is on pace to hit a 20-year high.
Why are so many unaccompanied minors coming across the border? Why? Why would so many unaccompanied minors want to come across the border? Joe said he's going to take them in. These people on the other side, they know the systems. They get briefed up on it. Where do you think the T-shirts came from? Have you seen that? Have you seen the T-shirts? Biden let us in. Who made the T-shirts? I want to know who made the T-shirts. If you know who made the T-shirts, please tell me who made the T-shirts. It's keeping me up at night. Well, let's get back to some real topics here. I make my jokes. Why are so many unaccompanied minors coming across the border? They know that they will take them in, especially if they're unaccompanied. What else are they supposed to do? Send them back, as Jen Psaki said. She got pressed on this, and then she said, what do you want us to do? Send the 10-year-olds back? Exactly. Exactly, Jen. Exactly. They know they're going to take them in, and then guess what happens? Chain migration. Something else Donald J. Trump fought against. You get somebody over, then they are established. Then they say, I need my mom. I need my dad. You can't separate families. I need my uncle. I need my second cousin twice removed. You can't separate families. All they have to do, and they know this, is get someone to the other side. There is incentive for them to send their children unaccompanied. Again, Jen Psaki, captain of the debate team, girl next door, wants to say, who would do this? It's so dangerous. Lots of people would do it when they're fleeing what they perceive to be a terrible situation to come to America, which I'm told is horribly and systemically racist, but they're coming here for a better life because of incentive. Another example I've given in the past is, if I leave my water running out of the spigot at the side of my house, and my neighbor comes over, collects my water, uses it for everything he wants, I'm paying for more water. If I turn my spigot off, I put a fence around my yard, a wall, if you will, that takes away the incentive for them to come over because it's disincentivizing them. I have to go over a wall. I have to go over here and turn this on. It's not just running for me. Turn the spigot off, which Governor Abbott talks about. Take away the incentive. Those facilities he was talking about originally deemed overflow facilities, not kids in cages, not kids in cages. Overflow facilities, the same facilities that Biden and Harris referred to as concentration camps, their words, not mine, on the campaign trail. Now, when they're being opened, they're overflow facilities. On top of that, the CDC allowed them to go to 50%, then 100%. Now there are reports showing that they are over 100% capacity and continuing to fill up more. Meanwhile, all across this great nation, schools are closed. Schools are closed. And you have over 100%, or in the very least, 100% capacity in these child overflow facilities at the border. On top of that, as the governor said, we don't know if they're tested. We don't know if they have variants. We don't know if they're infected, and we're releasing them. We're putting them with other populations. Democrats blocked what was called the REACT bill. If you didn't get to hear about that one, it didn't get much coverage. Why? Because the Democrats blocked it. What was in the REACT bill, you say? The REACT bill essentially mandated a negative COVID test in order to be released into Texas or released into America. Nope, say the Democrats, not going to happen on our watch. Meanwhile, those Texans, they better put those masks back on. They better have those masks on, those dirty, dirty Texans. But these people coming across the border, we don't need to test them. We don't need to know. We do not need to know. Let's go back to the idea of this being a surge. Unfortunately for Joe Biden, we actually have access to this thing called the internet. And for some of us, we have a memory. I think all of us have a memory and access to the internet. I want to hear what Joe Biden himself had to say about a surge. Juan, could you please play for me cut 6?
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
We could afford to take in a heartbeat another 2 million people. I would also move to increase the total number of immigrants able to come to the United States.
That pesky, pesky thing called the internet. And having a memory. Man, that thing really hurts us sometimes. There's no surge, even though I specifically said we should surge the border for those that need it. Joe, by the way, you're the president of America, not the world. A very famous, intelligent, and rather good-looking man with a beautiful head of hair told us that he was not, I'll let you figure out who that was. He was not president of the world. He was president of America. This goes back to turning off the spigot. Yes, Joe, your policy of rescinding the Remain in Mexico arrangement and policy that Trump had, which was to say, if you come across our border illegally, we are not releasing you into America. And this is before COVID. You shall stay in Mexico. He worked that deal out with Mexico. Of course, he was lambasted for doing that because then they were creating these situations where people were getting packed into Mexico. Okay, don't come here. You're coming here illegally. You want to seek asylum? Go through the port of entry. That's how you get into here legally, not coming across illegally. Joe rescinded that. People know that. People know that if you send your kid across and they get across, that is a possibility to get you across. There's a fundamental question here, and I've been alluding to it a little bit. What is the responsibility of the federal government? It is to ensure the safety and prosperity of Americans, period, dot, end of sentence. We have sick here. We have homeless here. We have the drug addicted here. We have the persecuted here. We have children who are homeless here. I am all for helping people and having a heart. I am America first, and this shows you why we need to be America first. We must take care of our own first. We have our own pandemic here. We have our own economic crisis here, which you saw so big that you needed to give everybody $1,400 that qualified for it. We have an immigration system here. There is an immigration system in place, and they could say it's broken because of Trump. It's an immigration system based on law. We have a representative government here. You want to change this immigration process? Pass a law. Pass a law. Pass a law. But that goes back to that pesky filibuster. You don't have the votes to pass this law. They want to get rid of this filibuster, which would essentially require them to have the 60 votes in the Senate. They want to get rid of it because they want their simple majority to rule supremely. It's what's called tyranny of the majority. In a pure democracy, if 51% of the population wants your bike, they take your bike. That's what they're trying to set up. They have a very small majority in the House. I think they have about a 9-seat lead. They have a 1 tiebreaker lead in the Senate. Both of them share one ideology with the White House, and they want to ram through everything. The breakneck speed at which they are pursuing this is scary, which is a term that's thrown around a lot. This is massive implications to America, what America is going forward. Throw your xenophobic terms at me if you want. Say that I don't want people here. I have an obligation to Americans, and I am American first. I am not so cold-hearted to say that we can't help other folks. There's other avenues to look at other than allowing massive amounts of migration to come into this country, which lowers the value of the lower class employee, the unskilled laborer, but we've gotten to that in the past. It has an increased draw onto our school systems and our hospitals. There's a lot of things that come with this. And there's a lot of other avenues that we can pursue. Not everything has to be, come on in and we'll take care of you. Also in regard to this mass surge coming across the border, Vox and other outlets who are so objective was talking about Representative McCarthy from the GOP and how the GOP was pushing a fake narrative that they say is not real, that they say is something that's pushed by the GOP, which is that terrorists are crossing the border. Let me quickly get for you what they had to say about that. Republicans revive one of Trump's most notorious immigration lies. They're attacking Biden with dubious claims about terrorists crossing the southern border. And they go on to proclaim how that is not true. Oh, but hold on a second. Over on Fox News, it says Kevin McCarthy proven right after Dems media accuse him of lying about suspected terrorists at the border. Why? Because they have actually apprehended terrorists at the border who are trying to infiltrate through this mass influx of people who are seeking asylum. But we can't continue to have that happen. We can't continue to have real news come through. I'm sure some context will be provided for us. I'm sure that they'll give us what we actually need to know in this situation. It's not going to stop, folks. I talked about it at the beginning. Let's not be naive. Let's not think that they're not shaping what they want us to see. Continue to seek us out. Find the smaller outlets. We do our very best here to stay on. It's a tough time right now with deplatforming, cancel culture. It's all very, very real. And it's something that we all have to take seriously. Continue to seek us out. We're doing our best. We're not going to let this keep us down. We need to band together. I'm seeing it happening. I know they're driving us further and further down, but I know that we're absolutely going to prevail. And with all of that being said, this has been my 2 cents on the media is just gross.
What's all the commotion, my jurist?
Professor, everyone's talking about what's happening in Texas.
Is that what's on your minds?
Only fanatics are against abortion.
Oh, really? Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, the Dalai Lama? It would seem to me clear as daylight that abortion would be a crime. Mahatma Gandhi. Fanatics?
None of them were getting pregnant. Regardless, we should have the right to control our own bodies.
Yes, one should have the right to do whatever she wants with her own actual body. But let me ask you something. What happens when that body starts to interfere with another body?
You mean the rights of the fetus?
It is part of our own bodies.
All of your body parts share the same DNA, except the fetus. So the child, by definition, is not part of anyone's body, but their own.
But how can you say it's a life? It can't live without the mother.
Well, Dan, were you able to feed yourself without your mother the day after you were born?
Well,
Not even a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old can take care of themselves.
Hey, this is Josh Barnes with Point of View, where we discuss the crucial questions that you have about the critical issues of our day from a biblical worldview. We believe that to be right about issues, you're going to have to be biblical about issues. Check out Point of View every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. and every Tuesday night from 8 to 8:30 right here on Right America Media Network at ramtv.live. Join us for the next episode of Point of View and let the Bible change your perspective.
I have seen God.
Ilhan Omar's free housing for everyone plan, the dreaded Democrat anti-gun H.R. 8 bill, and Slow Joe's border surge. This is The Loaded Mic, and I'm Dan Wass. You're listening to The Loaded Mic. Ilhan Omar has created a new plan for renters. It's a bill that would free renters of the rent due. It's called the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act. The basis of her plan is to create housing justice by capitalizing on the economic suffering that Democrats created with their overreaction to a virus and their overreach of political powers and executive orders with their unnecessary shutdowns and restrictions during the COVID scare. Omar said her plan would cancel rent and mortgage payments. Now, instantly, landlords and mortgage holders are freaking out because we think we're going to have to endure more of what we already have. I'm a real estate investor, and I know landlords who have lost buildings because they weren't getting paid, and renters were flipping them the bird and squatting in their buildings because government told them they didn't have to pay. Problem was, it put landlords in the position where they had no money coming in, yet all the same expenses were due. Taxes, utilities, maintenance, management, office-related work, insurance fees, legal fees, and the list goes on. So landlords want nothing to do with government-mandated free rents. But Democrats have received severe backlash on this type of rental theft. So Ilhan Omar has come up with a new twist to the old plan. It's called the Home Lender Relief Fund. Her plan offers to pay landlords and mortgage holders while freeing tenants from any past debt. Sounds great on the surface, right? Listen to this.
The solution is to cancel rent and mortgage payments. I introduced the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act, which would permanently cancel all rent and mortgage payments until April 2022. The legislation would also create a home lenders relief fund to fully compensate landlords and mortgage holders. It would also establish an optional fund that would help expand affordable housing on even after the pandemic ends.
So here's the problem. Any chance Democrats can get to make more people dependent on government, they'll take it. This is nothing more than another left-wing scheme to control society. Think about this for a minute. Landlords, you've gone a year receiving government payouts while your tenants have lived in your buildings for free. Do you think it'll stop at a year? No. So now you've gone 2 years receiving free government handouts. What happens then? Does everyone just magically go back to work and things go back to normal? Do tenants somehow find jobs and decide they want to start paying their own rent again? I don't care if it's 6 months or 6 years, and I think most landlords would agree with me that this is not the way we choose to do business in a free market society. If Democrats have their way, landlords and mortgage holders will be permanently dependent on government, and renters will get to live for free until further notice. If this happens, guess what you just became, landlords? Government housing. Democrats are trying desperately to open the door and have every landlord and mortgage holder walk through to their financial death. What comes with government housing? Well, often irresponsible tenants for one, but a slew of rules, restrictions, regulations, inspections, and in some cases, loss of ownership. Do you think any changes to the eviction process will come with a plan like this? Landlords, if you're collecting government handouts, do you think it'll be easier or harder to evict a bad tenant? Most landlords know how difficult it's been to evict tenants for any reason during the so-called COVID pandemic. But how difficult would it be after you've agreed in writing to take rent payments from Ilhan Omar and the Democrats? Don't think for a minute that the intentions behind these Democrat policies are for the greater good. They're only for the good of government, with the intent of making society dependent in the pursuit of their socialist utopia. And just in case you were to take the logical look at this new plan and consider it for what it really is, Democrats have found a way to implement racism as a way of encouraging you to support it. Watch this.
And we know that this pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities of color, and housing instability is no exception. Communities of color were far more likely to report that their household was not caught up on rent. That's 33% of African American renters, 20% of Latinx renters, 16% of AAPI renters, and 22% for American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, compared to 13% of white renters.
Don't fall for it. Don't you think that Omar and the Democrats are a little late to the game with this new plan? Why would they try this type of strategy after the so-called pandemic is over? If it was ever a pandemic to begin with. There's now a vaccine. We're reaching herd immunity, and several states have lifted all COVID restrictions simply because people are healthy. America is going back to work, getting back to normal, while Democrats are desperately trying to slow them down. So now they want to implement a new bailout policy. The fact is, it's becoming much more difficult for Democrats to use COVID as people are starting to get back to their normal lives, realizing that they don't need to be fearful and probably never did. Elon has worked into her plan a piece that extends the government's involvement in housing by creating a fund for affordable housing after the pandemic is over. Democrats always reveal themselves. If you listen carefully, they often try to slip things by the voter. In this next clip, you'll hear how they want to create this fund that will allow state and local governments to purchase private properties. Listen.
It creates an optional fund to fully finance the purchase of private rental properties by nonprofits, public housing authorities, cooperatives, community land trusts, and state and local governments in order to increase the availability of affordable housing during this downturn.
Throughout the entire speech on this radical left-wing policy, the consistent theme that housing is a human right and government will provide that right is present. There was also a heavy dose of fear and suffering. Watch this.
But make no mistake, our work is not over, and it must continue. The economic impact of this pandemic is worsening daily, and the threat of eviction and homelessness looms large for families in Massachusetts and all across this country.
Rights are not handed down by government. They're given by God. Sorry, Democrats, as much as you want to play God and as much as you'd like to control every aspect of commerce and the lives of the American citizens, you work for us, and don't forget it. You're in America now, Omar. And you know what you can do with your little government dependency plan. So Democrats, here's an idea. Stop trying to make everyone dependent on government and get to work at opening the economy and helping the free market system work as it should by utilizing the tried and true system we call capitalism and getting people back to work. You can start with the Keystone Pipeline. President Trump said it best, we will never be a socialist country. With this proposed policy from the radical left Democrats, you can see them desperately trying to steer our country down the road to socialism. So we're here today with John Chiara, and we're going to talk about Ilhan Omar's radical plan. So we talked in the green room a little bit about this stuff, and the idea that she wants to give money to renters and give money, which isn't hers in the first place. It's our money. Give it to mortgage holders and landlords. To me, sounds like it's socialism in a box.
Yeah, I don't know what it's supposed to fix. Well, short term, because everybody's panicked, right? That's how we're looking at a lot of these things.
And that's another thing. They got to keep the panic going.
Right, that's the whole narrative. That's what's necessary. I mean, when you got a president who you never see, you have to have something going on to keep people's attention, right? So these people are all. Yeah, I know enough about the situation from talking to you that we know that tenants in some situations are not paying their rent. So that's one situation. You, on the other hand, still have all your expenses that don't change because of that. So is she saying that this bill is supposedly going to change that, or she's just going to let you stop paying your mortgage, but that doesn't change the loan, because the mortgage is a loan, right? The rent is a payment for service, basically. They're renting the space for a period of time. It's like renting a car or something. Yeah. So it's not the same kind of thing. They don't owe anything except for the month-by-month payment. So I don't understand how this situation is going to help you or anybody else long-term, besides just making everybody more dependent on the government for whatever. This is what I argue so much, is that we don't need another layer of structure put in on top of all these things and think it's going to make things better, because we know that the consequences down the line will probably be disastrous, as usual with most government.
Well, and my question, I have a question on what are they, what if this plan ever went through, what do they plan on doing? Do they plan on paying the landlord's mortgage payments? Because some people might say, well, yeah, that's, I hate these people who don't own rental real estate.
Who aren't real estate investors.
They're not real estate investors, and they think that they understand, well, you landlords are over there getting rich, and now you've got an opportunity to have your mortgages paid. Isn't that what you wanted? No. Here's the problem. I'm getting X amount of dollars coming in rents. I have to pay a mortgage payment, maybe. Yeah, that's part of it. What about maintenance? What about insurance? What about taxes? What about office work? We have offices, people working in offices, managing. What about court fees and all sorts of other stuff? What about profit? I'm not in this business. Landlords aren't in the business of landlording or real estate investing to not make a profit. That's why we do it. Some people say, well, you're just in it for the money. Well, that's why you buy investments.
As one consequence that I'm thinking of when I think of, too bad there's not a test you can have so you know who is going to be a responsible tenant up front, right? Because I've heard horror stories from you about people leave and just trash the place just for some reason, whatever. But my point is that if the government's paying your mortgage and everybody else is getting rent for nothing, is that going to make a new crop of responsible tenants all of a sudden? Your expenses may still go up because your insurance might go up, right? Because over the course of a year, all kinds of landlords are going to be filing suits because people are punching holes in their walls and stuff.
Yeah, and then how would you evict? How would you be able to evict people if you had a bad tenant? I'm not saying all tenants are bad, but there are some. Believe me, we've experienced those. So now that you've signed whatever paperwork necessary to collect this government payment for your real estate, don't you think that there's going to come some restrictions with that? Don't you think that the government is going to have a whole list of stuff, ways that they can control that property? And
somebody would have to control it, right? Because they're taking the control away from you, basically. Well, they think that they are.
Well,
and that's the point.
I'll bet you there's going to be some leverage there. Right. They wouldn't do anything like this. Democrats would not do something like this unless there was something in it for them. They don't do anything out of the kindness of their heart. They claim to want to help the poor innocent people,
but they always want to do it from the top down, which seems strange to me. If they're really worried about this, why don't they just find the people that actually can't work because of the pandemic? Because obviously all the tenants out there, they were working. Are they not working? If you're not working and you can't work because of the pandemic, pay their rent. That solves the whole problem, right? That starts at the beginning of the cash flow and puts the money where it needs to be in order for you to run your end of the business the way it's set up to be run.
Well,
if they were doing that, but they don't need to do all this other stuff. This is all control issues. It looks like.
Of course. And here's an idea. Let's be done with this pandemic already.
I think it's going to be hopefully done.
I mean, how long can they hold on to it?
Well, according to her, till next April, I guess.
Isn't it obvious that this pandemic is over, if it was ever a pandemic to begin with? Because look at all the states that are wide open. The blue states are so annoyed with Florida because Florida's proven them wrong. It's proving them to be liars. California and Florida are comparable in a lot of ways. They're comparing them now with respect to this so-called pandemic. Florida's wide open. People are running around doing their thing, and the numbers are low. There's no problem.
They guessed right, did the policy that ended up working, at least for them.
But Democrats hate that. The blue states hate that because it shows that they're continuing to hold on to this pandemic for everything it's worth. And just the idea that and if people watch the video of Omar, she says that this wasn't caused by the pandemic. This was a problem that was previous, right? This rental issue, which,
So you had a rental issue. You had historically low unemployment for years, and we have a rental issue. That's the issue.
Yeah.
So when was it ever better than that? When was it different?
They can't say that it's just because of COVID, right? Because now that COVID is over, how do they justify their policy?
I think it's your fault.
They have to say that it already was present prior to COVID.
It's systemic.
It's right. It's another systemic thing. Unbelievable.
I don't get it. There's so many variables here that I don't see how this is going to turn into, especially at this point. I mean, like you say, within the next year, we're going to be out of this by any means that I can see. And why would you want to do something? They seem to want to keep this they want to create as much dependence as possible and put that in place so that it extends beyond the pandemic, so that it's just a stepping stone, and that's pretty sinister.
We're already out of it. We're out of it.
I'm out of it.
I'm out of it. We're in the studio here. We're out of it.
All my friends have been vaccinated.
Danny Watts Jr. Anthony's in the studio too.
He's out of it.
We didn't mention it. He's definitely out of it. What do you guys think about all this? What do you think about Anthony? What do you think about your girl Omar?
I think her plan's absurd.
Is that all
and I think people will fall for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep, people will fall for it.
I just don't see what the whole. Again, if some people are having problems paying their rent, okay, give those people money. Fine, let them pay their landlords, or pay you the rent if you're the landlord. Yeah. But I don't see why you have to make this into some giant situation and make it all controlling from the government, from the federal government.
Yeah.
What's the point of that? That never works anyway.
I don't want their rent. I don't want any of this. I don't want to take a government handout, because what that does is it makes it makes landlords and mortgage holders dependent. Now, landlords and mortgage holders are going to be going, okay, where's my government check? That's the last thing that capitalists...
Right.
They're trying...
See, now they think that you would like that, right?
Well, because they would like it.
This is a big assumption, projection on their part. Oh, government money, that's the best thing you could possibly get. No.
Capitalists don't want that. That's why we're capitalists. That's why we understand how the free market works. We provide a product or service, and in exchange, we get a value in money. Right. We don't want government in the middle of this stuff, because as soon as they get in, they're going to regulate everything and turn our beautiful system, our beautiful free market system of capitalism into socialist hell. And I'm not interested.
And most people that are involved in it are not. I just saw a thread on a philosophy page yesterday about the premise was competition is bad because of this, and this. And
competition is bad?
Yeah. And my whole point was, but competition has given you everything you have. So if it's bad, then, throw out your computer, don't drive your car. It's like it's such a short-sighted, it's almost like there's this overall, there's got to be a better way to do this, and we're going to figure out what it is, when in reality, they don't have enough information to do that. And there's no structure to do that. The only structure that can possibly accomplish what they don't accomplish is an all-controlling government. That's the only structure that can fill in all those blanks. And then that takes out all the competition. It takes out everything. So all the people that are already producing things, what are you going to do? Why would you want to participate in that kind of system? You wouldn't want to participate, right? I wouldn't want to participate.
Yeah, definitely not.
Why would you want to be better than somebody else? Why would you want to get better at something if there's no reward for that?
Quarter Italian Danny, what do you think?
I don't know. I think this new switcher we got is kind of cool.
It is pretty cool.
I've been caught up in this whole focused on the technical side of it.
So you're not even listening?
Barely.
All right. How about Anthony? Anthony, you listening over here?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So Anthony's involved.
What's the gender of that switcher? Do we know? Is it switchable?
Is that gender fluid, that switcher?
It's neutral. I'm gonna say it's a she.
It's neutral.
I'd call it a she. It's like a boat, like a ship.
So it is kind of cool though. We've got the third camera in here. We can get Danny Wass Jr. We can get Anthony in here. We can
John Chiara.
We got Eighth Irish John. Let's get a shot of Eighth Irish John with his green St. Patty's Day shirt.
Only green shirt I own.
But so anyway, that's it. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll wait to hear more about this ridiculous Ilhan Omar.
It just seems like something that's not necessary and just partisan and controlling. And again, like you say, if this happened a year ago in anticipation of something, but you know how these people are. They're all reactive. They can't anticipate anything because they don't understand consequences, and they don't know how to look down the road and see and ask themselves, well, if we do this, what might happen? Because that's the first thing I hear. I got a whole list of questions like, what's going to happen if you do this?
What's going to happen? That's exactly the problem. Nobody looks at this stuff. They see she's on there with her crew, and you saw we only played little tiny bits of this stupid press conference she had, but she's on there with the crew, and people are going, yeah, sounds good. Free money for everybody. And you mentioned we were talking in the green room. I couldn't see you in the green room because of your shirt. You blended in like camouflage. But in the green room, we were talking about where's this money coming from was one of the things. What the hell?
And we decided that Anthony was saying that if they do this, if this kind of thing goes through, we're going to need a stimulus package every year from every year on forward, just to pay for this, just to pay for because what's going to happen is if you start offering that, people are going to be taking advantage of it, right? They're going to jump right on board, and that's what they must want. But
yeah, how much was the bill or the amount per month you said that was it was going to show?
Oh, you did some math, didn't you?
$128 billion a month. 1.7 trillion.
That's just kind of a rough estimate. That's just kind of like a rough.
It's only money. Let's print it tomorrow.
But even if it's a quarter of that,
I mean, if they're going to print money, just give me some.
I'm getting some. I'm waiting on my money.
Problem is, it's our money. This is the ridiculous thing.
Up that way.
This is like okay. So you go to the store, right, and you buy something at the store for $100, and you get change, right? You get, like, let's say you get $15 in change. People are excited about this. That's what your taxes are. You're paying in, and they give you a little handout, and you're all thankful and excited about this money. It was your money in the beginning, and it's not all of it. It's a fraction of it that you know. And then you're gonna, I don't know, are we writing that stuff off on taxes? Like if that stimulus thing comes in?
I don't know. I know I just did my taxes the other day, and I think the first 10,000 of unemployment is off the books.
So what about this stimulus? Are we going to pay taxes on our money that our government gives back to us?
Somebody's got to pay taxes. Where's it going to come from?
So wait a minute.
Let me
get this straight. We pay taxes all year long. Sleepy Joe gives us back a portion of our money that we paid in, and we have to pay taxes on that portion we got back?
Bills and bills and bills and bills.
I don't know if that's accurate. I'm not sure if that's how it works.
But the concept is just valid.
But I'll bet you they could, yeah. So, but then here's the other thing is, if the money gets automatically deposited into your account or you get a check, what are you going to do? You're not going to give it back so you can put it back in the fund so Democrats can use it for Planned Parenthood or something.
Well, then I
tell you what I'm going to do with mine if I ever get anything.
I know what you're going to do with yours.
I'm going to put it into
real estate.
I would put my stimulus money I'd pay into a cause that I believe in, right? I'll buy another AR-15, right?
I thought it was going to be like Trump's like 2024 campaign or something. I'm just going to buy a bunch of video games and like maybe like a Switch or not like a mixer or something for the show.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do.
Or you could just come in and record some songs and give me the money. That'd be good.
Well, we could do that too.
But with this bill now,
Anthony's going to get something for his Mustang.
I already did.
What'd you get?
Oh, all kinds of stuff.
And where's the list? What did Anthony get for his Mustang?
Didn't he just have
Look at
his
that cute little light on the back?
Didn't he just have his wheels powder coated or something?
Yeah, something like that with those.
I saw. You know what? I also saw the funky little lug nuts you got there.
He's got the lug nuts.
What do you think?
What is that? Bust on the Stang Day?
Bust on the Stang.
Got the red brake.
I asked him if it had a 4-cylinder in it, and he didn't like.
He said something there that we can't say on camera when you asked him that.
Yeah.
But the question I have about this bill is it's saying that they're going to forgive the payments, right? So is there actually any money transactions going on there, or are they just saying you don't have to pay this and you don't have to pay this? And
but they also said they're
go?
going to reimburse landlords and mortgage holders.
Right. That's good for you. See, take the money.
Well, first of all, how could you not? If they're mandating that you, the real estate owner, is mandated now to let people live in your places for free.
Right.
What are you going to do? Turn the money down? Yeah, you have.
No,
I mean,
your stock. You get your stock, and this is basically they're talking about residential stuff, right? They're not talking about commercial buildings, because like the state and the federal government lease all kinds of federal buildings and stuff. Are they going to stop paying their rent too? Or what are they going to do? How does that work?
You know what? Another thing is, let me remake that point that I talked about in the monologue, which was really interesting. They have this optional fund to fully, and I'm quoting, it creates an optional fund to fully finance the purchase of private rental properties by nonprofits, public housing authorities, cooperatives, community land trust, and get this, state and local governments to increase the availability of affordable housing during the downturn. So in other words, it says, going to create an optional fund to finance the purchase of private property by state and local governments. What does that mean?
They're encroaching on your business.
Does that mean that they're creating a fund where the government will come in to ultimately purchase your property? And what are they talking about there? This is scary stuff, because when you read between the lines of some of this stuff, and I haven't read all the legislation yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they'd figure out a way to ultimately own your buildings.
That, or maybe they're just talking about available properties that come up for sale and stuff, just taking over and going into that business. That no problems with that, right? Government going in.
Yeah. Problem is, government can't manage anything. They can't
Because they try to micromanage when that's not their gig, you know? It's not what they're...
Well, you look at the post office. I mean, post office, you go in and there'll be like simple little things that could be fixed that would make such a big difference. And you get
Like,
the same...
tell us the post office story. What's going on with the post
Well,
office?
I don't know.
go there very
like the automatic doors, for instance. You know, the one post office, they don't work right. And it's like, you can complain, but if they don't work right, why don't you just fix the freaking door? And the problem will be solved, but they don't fix it. They continue to live with it year after year after year when it could probably just be a simple mechanism that needs to be changed.
There's probably all kinds of things like that throughout that whole
Well, that's the
thing
problem.
that's going on. Yeah.
People who run these government entities or government businesses, if you want to call it that, they don't seem to like to fix problems. I don't know why, you know. It just seems that way.
Same theme. You're depending on them, and they keep you dependent, and they never fix it. That's why we have boogeymen things that they keep throwing at you. Like, this is a horrible racism, this, that, blah, blah. All these white supremacy, all these things that you're never going to fix because you don't even know what the heck they are. They keep them on the front burner, and everybody's worried about it. And here we are. We're the government. We're here to help.
And it's all fear. It's all fear-based.
Oh, yeah.
All this stuff is get people as scared as you can to get them to support it. And
I just don't know who is being evicted. Like, what if nobody's being evicted? You have tenants. Are they not working now and they were working before? This is back to the whole thing, like, well, what was going on before? Like, was there a situation that we were all unaware of or what? Because they were all renting and all paying their rent, right?
Here's a little bit of insight on the we have rental, we have just rental apartments, mostly multi-unit buildings. And so what happened was in New York State, when Cuomo put the clench on courts and evictions and all that stuff, we realized that we lost a ton of money. I mean, my company lost. I have real estate investor friends who lost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because people knew that they didn't have to pay their rent. And there was no reimbursement.
Right.
So what happened was, and we couldn't go to court to evict them. So we went through this whole thing through this winter. It was just horrible. And tenants were literally telling us to, well, you know what they're telling us.
Pound dirt.
Yeah, go pound sand, pound dirt. And so what happened was we decided to leave a bunch of units empty, vacant. I would rather, and a lot of landlords across New York State decided, okay, if you want to play that game, Cuomo, we won't. Once we get them out, we're leaving our properties vacant. We know how badly people need apartments right now, and we are going to resist, and we're not going to rent them. And apartments right up until now are still staying vacant because landlords won't deal with it.
Well, they have to deal because they still have to deal with all the back end stuff, regardless, right?
Well,
whether the people are paying or not.
Here's the thing: we just decided to start opening up some apartments. So we had some rentals that we wanted to rent out. Now we decided, okay, let's start renting them. And the phone is. I'm telling you, when I say ringing off the hook, I mean it's freaking going crazy. The phone doesn't stop people looking for apartments in some of these towns because they can't find it. They just can't find apartments. So what's happening, I think, is that landlords are just they're just leaving them vacant. It's better to leave your property vacant than put people in who are going to squat and not pay rent and possibly even destroy the place.
Leaving them vacant is a known quantity because you know that it's going to be there. And when you
It's
go
going to
back
be
there,
there.
it's going to be what
It's
you
going to be
left.
clean. It's going to be, it's going to be in good condition.
Most people break in and squat.
Where are we at on the clock here, Jenny Wass Jr.?
You can take a break.
Okay. We're going to take a short break. Be right back.
I'm Danny Wash Jr., producer of The Loaded Mic. I just wanted to let you know that you can find us at Simul TV, Right America Media, YouTube, and Rumble. You can also find the podcast at Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Or you can go to loadedmic.com. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave a review.
The Second Amendment is a priority at the Loaded Mic. If we don't defend the right to keep and bear arms, there are people who are happy to violate it. The strategies and tactics of the anti-gun crowd and politicians are sinister. We need to understand those tactics. I wrote the Good Gun, Bad Guy book series as the rule book to their evil game, so we can understand their strategies and motives to defeat them. Understand the mindset of the anti-gunner in Book 1. Learn the media strategies behind the gun grab in Book 2. And understand the politics behind their mission in Book 3. Go to goodgunbadguy.com.
Hey, we're back from break. Okay.
Are we back already?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that was funny. All right. There's another topic that I want to hit on, and we did a little video. If people want to go back and look on the YouTube page, the Loaded Mic YouTube page, or the Rumble, we did a short video on HR 8, which is an anti-gun bill that passed the House of Representatives. It's called an act to require a background check for every firearm sale. In other words, what they call is the universal background checks. Now, some people might say, "Oh, well, the universal background check, good. That's
Sounds
what we
good to
need,
me.
right? Sounds good. Everybody gets a background check."
Dan's going to tell us why it's not so good.
Well, it's not so good. It's not so good for a couple reasons, because what it does, and this is always the intent of the gun grabbers, it creates, number one, it creates a gun registry. So if I wanted to sell you a gun, or even just let you use a gun, we would have to go to a dealer, and both of us would have background checks done.
Got it.
Now, okay, so what's the problem? We've got no problem, right? We're good law-abiding citizens. Even Anthony's a good law-abiding citizen, right?
Drove a paddy wagon.
He did, actually. Didn't you drive the criminals around?
Yeah, for 13 years.
Oh,
Paddy wagon. Isn't that Irish?
The paddy wagon.
Cops were Irish, right? That was the whole deal. That's what they called it.
Oh, is that why they called it a paddy wagon?
Paddy wagon.
All right. So let me get back to what we were talking about. What was I talking about? Oh, okay. So
HR8.
Guns.
so here's the thing.
You're trying to sell me a rifle. So
The
what do we do?
background check, not a big deal, right? Because we're law-abiding citizens.
Right.
So here's the problem. 99%, first of all, 99% of all background check denials are false positives. In other words, good guys being denied their right to purchase a gun with no good reason. Now, this is interesting numbers. In 2017, the U.S. Government Accountability Office did a study on, first of all, how many background checks were done for gun purchases. And there were 8.6 million background checks done. Okay, that's a pretty good number. A lot of transactions in 1 year. Of the 8.6 million, there were 112,090 denials. 112,090 denials out of 8.6 million. Now you'd think, okay, well, caught a lot of bad guys. And that's what the Democrats say. Well, we stop all sorts of criminals from getting guns with these background checks. In 2017, there were 112,000 criminals were stopped. Here's the real story. Out of those 112,090 denials, there were only 12,710 investigations. 112,000 denials, 12,000 investigations. That tells us that right off the rip, the majority of the 112,000 were false positives. Right. They knew it early on.
Weren't even worth investigating.
Exactly. Right. Good point. So let me now I just want you to be able to, because sometimes the numbers are hard to comprehend.
I got it.
8.6 million transactions, 112,000 denials, 12,000 investigations. Guess how many people who shouldn't have been buying a gun were stopped?
Tons, I bet.
12.
Okay, well that's
out of 112,000 denials, only 12 people who shouldn't have been buying a gun were stopped. So that means 112,000 people, good guys, were stopped, prevented from buying a gun for no good reason. Anthony, what do you think of that?
A little flawed.
Flawed's a good word. So did they go back and tell those people that now you can buy the gun after the false positive is detected? How does that
Well, a
work?
lot of times what happens is people have to go and they have
That
to
they'll reapply and start all over again, right?
all sorts of stuff. What I think Democrats and gun grabbers, and now we have a few Republicans too in there who supported this bill HR 8. What I think they want, part of this, is to discourage gun owners. So what happens is good guys want to get a gun. They realize that it's a huge process and a painful process because they're getting denied and all this stuff and all.
Right.
So if they do get denied, people are likely to just give up and say, "Oh, screw it, I won't get a gun."
So the politicians kill me on this because did they think that by doing this you're actually stopping criminals from getting guns? Because what you just said, and we don't even know what those 12 people were, right? It's not like they're gangbangers or something going down to downtown Chicago to
It
City
could have a
Hall and saying,
DWI.
give me a gun. It could have a DWI,
Yeah.
right.
It could be something it could be something that wasn't even violent.
I'm assuming
related.
anything like losing your driver's license, having suspended license or anything comes up as a red flag and all these kind of tests or
Yeah.
any kind of criminal activity, whatever that is.
Thank you for asking. Let me give you a couple examples of a couple
Oh,
guys.
I didn't think you know. I thought I'd stump you.
Well, I'm too smart.
You are.
Actually, no, but I did a little research and I have notes.
That's good.
So I'm really.
Well, I want to know.
I'm really not that smart. Anyway, so this guy named Ronnie Coleman from Virginia, he got denied because his name and social security number were, as authorities said, close enough to that of a felon, of a violent felon. So he was denied his rights. Here's another one. Frank Wise of Florida. This guy got denied gun purchase, falsely denied, because 20 years before, his company, the company he worked for went out of business. They went bankrupt, and he bounced 2 checks as a result. So because he bounced 2 checks 20 years ago, and they said that his record was cleared, he was denied, and just for that. So there's 2 examples right there.
Wait, he was denied for a bounced check?
Yeah. He was
20 years ago?
20 years ago, 2 bounced checks, he was denied. See the shock and awe on his face?
I've never bounced a check before, but I've overdrafted.
There's a lot of local bar owners who could never get a gun permit if that was the case, right?
Yeah. Well, bouncing a check is that a federal crime?
Well, I'm saying is that, it might be if it's a federal bank, it's a federal, that's what it is. So I'm saying there's all kinds of things that could come up that have nothing to do with you owning a gun that could all cause false positives to happen.
Well, it brings you back to your point. You said, how do they think that they're going to stop violence? They don't think they're going to stop it. That's not why these gun restrictions are put in place. It's not to stop violence. They tell you that it's to stop violence. But they realize these people they're not stupid. The gun grabbers, the anti-gun left, they're not stupid. They understand. They see the results. They know who they're stopping. They're stopping the good guys. They're preventing lawful Americans from purchasing guns. They're slowing that process down.
What does that do, though? I wish you could talk to some of these politicians face to face and say, if you're doing this and these law-abiding citizens are being denied the right to own a gun, what are you accomplishing by that? Yeah. Who's being helped by that?
Well, like I said, they're going to tell you it's to stop people from
gun violence.
It's going to stop. We can get into that. We don't have time. We don't have time for that
because it's all about the gun.
But so here's an example, a terrible example of a woman who ended up dying because of a gun delay, a purchase delay. Her name is Carol Bound. We've talked about her before. She's from New Jersey. She applied for her handgun permit, her license. And in New Jersey, they had a 30-day waiting period. So because Jersey decides that they know better than
these are all picked. These are all just like so many things in politics, not decided, but so many policies they get made. The numbers that are there are just decided upon politically. They had nothing to do with any kind of science or reality or anything. Nothing.
Right. So Carol Bound, she goes to try to get her her handgun license. And there's a reason she wants to get her license, because her boyfriend, was boyfriend or husband, I don't know, it doesn't matter. He was abusing her. So she was in an abusive relationship and she feared for her life. So she goes to get her handgun permit. There was a 30-day waiting period. So she's waiting it out, trying to stay away or not get herself killed from this guy. 30 days goes by. 43 days later, he stabs her to death. She had a what do you call it, a protection order,
Right.
on this guy. She had multiple cases that she brought reports to the police reports, and he ends up stabbing her to death 43 days after she applied for her handgun license. But because Jersey decided she needed to wait, now she's dead.
So all those government regulations.
Yeah.
And she still
That's what it
ended
does.
up dead.
Yep. So
That's not good.
what else is going on in politics?
Anybody seen Joe?
Sleepy Joe? Slow Joe?
Anything happened at the border?
Slow Joe.
I heard it took parts of the wall down, letting people in.
Can you believe this?
Kids in cages, but they're not cages anymore.
not
now
anymore.
they're overflow detention centers or whatever they are, or something like that.
What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the whole...
Anthony's more up on it than me. I've been avoiding the whole national news thing.
I got banned on Facebook. I can't look at anything.
Oh, so you're out of the loop?
I'm out of the loop.
Oh, God. Well, and just so people know, Anthony is not the most polite person on Facebook.
He's your
Is
typical
that
Mustang
fair?
owner.
From what I hear.
Is that fair, Anthony? How do you like to express...
speaks his
I speak the
mind.
truth.
How do you express...
People don't like to hear the truth, so I get banned.
That's true. But, so, old Sleepy Joe there, who can barely tie his shoes and put his own underwear on, he's decided that he wants to let everybody in. Well, maybe you don't come in now, maybe you wait, and now they're flowing in. You know, you've been following this stuff. What's going on over there?
No, I haven't been following the immigration stuff. I have not really. The last 2-3 weeks, I have been totally out of it.
Well, I do know that they're coming
I've
over.
seen pictures of, and so why aren't those numbers first thing on CNN every morning? This 200,000 illegal immigrants came across the border today. What are we going to do? That would be a good question.
Wearing Biden shirts.
Thank you, Joe, for letting us in.
Right. What about the Biden shirts? Where do these Biden shirts come from?
Wait, they actually had Biden shirts?
They got,
whole
yeah,
bunch of them
Biden let us in. What was it?
They stopped at the local print shop and got them made on the way, down by the river.
Certain
What the hell?
entrepreneurs who said, this is an opportunity. Let's, that's how people work, right?
They had to have got all these people, because you saw the shot of all these people with the Biden
and that
shirts.
can't look good
Maybe
for the
we
left,
can put a little.
so that's got to be somebody
Can we get
on
a
the
shot
right.
of that? Can we get a shot of that in there?
Probably a
I
MAGA
guess we
hat
can.
manufacturer.
Okay. Let's get a shot of the Biden shirts, just so people can see this if they haven't seen it already. So here's the thing: they're wearing these Biden shirts. Biden let us in, or whatever it said. What do they do? The Democrats get together and say, "Hey, listen, okay, all you people, after you're coming over the border here, you just got done swimming through the swampy river. Come on over here, everybody, gather around. We're going to hand out these
What
T-shirts."
size do you need?
Yeah,
They should give them to the kids in cages. If all the kids hanging on the cage with Biden shirts on, see, that would be cool.
Oh my
That'd
God.
be good marketing. That'd be good.
They were shooting them with the T-shirt cannon.
Yeah, right. Throwing them off the stage.
Large is coming at you.
Frozen T-shirts.
Who needs a 2X? Who needs a 2X?
Oh my gosh.
So they're all wearing the Biden shirts, and it's like, I guess my question here is this. Are people who support or voted for Biden, are they watching their TV screen and going, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this is. Don't they see what the hell Democrats are doing? Don't they see? I mean,
Yeah, but it's different than if Republicans were doing it. It's just different, right? Nothing matters. It's like, this same thing is going on. Okay, we won't put that on the news. It's like, it's mind-boggling. I don't even understand.
I guess people who watch CNN, don't they recognize how manipulated they're being?
Well, now let's talk about the thing now, the news, like the left is kind of turning on Cuomo, right?
Yeah, that's
so.
interesting.
There's other situations around the country where I've seen little snippets of stuff where people are starting to question things, which I think is probably a good thing that there's at least a question in there somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a curiosity factor that might not have been there before. I don't know where that's going to end up, but it's just that I think that so many people have been programmed by the media that they just believe whatever they say. I mean, some of the stuff is like the opposite of what they were saying. I've heard people on the left making what were Republican arguments 6 months ago. You know, and the whole thing, even with the election results, how, you know, last year they had the PBS documentary about how all everybody on the left was worried about Dominion and worried about all this other stuff and worried about the credibility of the elections. And then when they won, they're all, it's all great.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing with that, Mike Lindell, whatever his name is doing My Pillow guy is doing the lawsuits against Dominion. And somebody today predicted that will never go to court because if they get the ability to do discovery and all that stuff, they're going to say, okay, Dominion, show us your source code. Show us how it works.
Yep.
And they're not going to do that. Either they're not able to do it or they won't do it. So it'll stop, they'll settle, and the whole thing will, you know, after
Kinda
they've
go away
made an evil guy out of Mike Lindell because he's curious about this stuff.
He'll go away like Hillary's server.
Right.
And by the way, we're going to be sponsoring, or My Pillow is going to be sponsoring the show soon, isn't that?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah. That's pretty
Cool.
Yeah.
So we can get blue shirts, little crucifix, buttons up to the top.
That's right. He does wear the little thing.
Always.
No,
I just can't wait to get my towel set. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm just excited for that.
I have a My Pillow. It's comfy.
I need a new pillow.
Oh, is it?
Oh, I sleep beautifully
Do
on
you
it.
recommend
What
it?
about
Does Dooley have a My Pillow?
Of course he does.
We'll literally get the travel pillow for Dooley.
Don't they have the little dog beds too?
I don't know. I didn't go that deep into it.
Oh, they have pet beds, and they're like $29. You should look into it.
I thought they had pet beds.
They do.
Well, anyway, we're going to be promoting My Pillow here soon on the show, and so we're excited about that. But yeah, so there you go. So there's the border stuff is just absolute insanity over there, and
I just wish they'd show it. I don't. Why isn't that the first thing every morning we hear on the news? How many people came across? There should be a clock, right, or something. There should be a counter going. How many people came across the border today? I would be interested in that. That's as important as anything else.
of course it is. But that's why.
And the testing, are they sick? Do they have COVID? What's the deal?
They're not going to tell anything because they don't want it to
confused.
reflect bad on Joe.
Well, that's just. I mean, does anybody think that Joe's running the country? I mean,
I'm
anybody?
pretty sure Kamala's running the country.
Or anybody.
Pretty
Somebody's
sure.
doing something.
I don't even think she's running it.
I don't think she's running it. I think they're
smart enough.
keeping her. Well, you haven't heard from her, right? No, she's not hardly ever anywhere talking about anything.
Right.
The whole administration is just like locked down, and you're just.
Has he done a press conference yet?
No.
Next week.
Oh, okay.
But what Scott Adams
He's
said
saying
this
next
morning
week.
again is that the more they keep him out of the news, the higher his ratings go. So he figured today that if he went into a coma tomorrow, his ratings would be 80%. It's the same thing with Cuomo. Like, if we get enough women to accuse Cuomo, we can be back to 100% occupancy in bars by next month, probably, because that's the way it's followed. More people accuse somebody of something, well, they do something politically. More people accuse somebody, they do things politically. It's kind of weird. It's all upside down. It's craziness.
Well, I don't know how we can take the left-wing media serious. I really just don't understand how people do. It's just such a fantasy world, and it's such a bunch of propaganda nonsense that it's silly to watch.
It's silly.
Once you're able to recognize what's going on in the media, and you see people, you'll see people in public going, talking about what a great job Joe is doing. I mean,
really? What?
What's he doing? Yeah. Exactly.
Getting through his 18-minute speech? What's he doing?
Oh, so that's what I want. So next week, you said he's doing a speech.
Yep.
A press conference. Does that mean he's going to take questions?
No. It's all
What?
going to be pre-staged.
What?
And the people are going to talk for him.
What?
His puppets are going to talk for him. He's not going to answer questions.
Seriously?
No.
But they're going to call it a Joe Biden.
That's right.
So he's not going to answer questions. What a dirtbag. I can't believe. And you know what? It's not even him. He's not even the dirtbag. It's the people who are controlling him like a puppet that are the dirtbags. and we knew that he wasn't elected. He was
It's weird.
inputted. He was
Yeah, like I wonder how he feels just like as a man, just like knowing that he didn't get the votes.
Yeah.
And just been, oh, well, I'm the president. I wonder how he feels.
I don't think he knows.
Nah, he's got to know.
I don't know. I think Joe just sits there.
He just.
It's hard to watch, right? I mean,
it's
listen
painful.
To his, I hear his voice sometimes. I'm not watching it, but I hear
And
his
he's
voice, and it's horrible. It sounds like that's not Joe Biden from 2 years ago. You know,
he can't get the words out. He can't put two.
And he keeps calling people pal all the time. He did it in some speech the other day. Well, pal, I'm like, really? What are you talking? Did you hear?
Here's the deal.
He had a talk with Putin. Did you hear? He talked to Putin. He says, "Well, we got some stuff straightened out. I've known Putin for a long time, and I told him there's going to be consequences."
Oh,
of
yeah.
that.
I'm
They're
sure
all worried about that.
Yeah, I'm sure Putin's scared of little Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, he's scared.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, all right. So, anyway.
So you're going to be getting your mortgage paid, and you're going to be happy, right?
I won't be happy.
I think that whole thing is just a scam. They should start at the other end of that and figure out how to fix stuff if they're going to fix stuff and not.
I sure hope none of this passes. I hope this is just another far left
because
wing
you'll
dream.
never get it taken away once it gets in.
Can you imagine? Yeah, like we're all of a sudden at some point we're all of a sudden go back to normal. People are going to go back to work and okay, it's all over. Everything back. This stuff, when government gets involved in this stuff, it gets so intertwined in all aspects of business. I'm just thinking, I haven't even thought this through, but I can think of probably a bunch of ways that this will be impossible to rewind.
Yeah.
So now think about this. If you're signing off and you're agreeing to take tenants with government payment, I'll bet you they'll find a way to put the clenches on your insurance policy, whatever regulations that they're going to create, in all sorts of different ways. I think if we let them do this, it'll be impossible to unwind.
I agree. Like everything else.
Yeah, like everything else, government. Government gets its tentacles involved in everything. Just like, look at the COVID stuff. Look at all the restrictions and all the stuff, all the restaurant restrictions and just all the regulations with masks and stuff. It's not easy to just stop this stuff all of a sudden.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's another thing is that I might have brought this up last time, but one of the big areas right now that's really screwed up is the restaurant owners themselves, because they can't get people to come back to work because they're getting more money on unemployment than they can think they're going to make if they're going to come back and work at a restaurant that has 50% capacity because they can't make the tips that they used to.
Exactly.
So maybe they should be a policy where, okay, we're going to pay restaurant owners out of a fund so they can pay their employees to get them to come back. So when it does come out of this, they have employees.
Right.
Because right now, I know a guy right now that owns a bar that I go to every week. He's 78 years old. He's living there 5 days a week because he's got to wash dishes every night. He's got to cook. He can't get people to work. That's something. That would be something I would say. Start at the bottom and look at that, and maybe do something to help that situation. But to make this blanket government thing where you don't have to pay your rent, what's it gonna go?
Oh, and that's my thing. Now think about renters who are getting their rent paid for a year, 2 years, however long Omar and her little friends want to do this. So think about. So why would renters ever have the initiative to want to go back to paying their own rent?
I'm going to look into this. Maybe I don't have to pay my rent. If this passes, maybe they'll pay my rent.
Yeah.
I'm going tomorrow for my last ditch PPP loan, I guess.
Oh.
They'll try to get.
Okay.
Ends on the 31st. Yeah.
Well.
I didn't make the rule, It sucks. But I can't. But see, I'm one of the people, though, that can't work. I can't go do my job because they stopped concerts and stuff. I can't go work. That's where I make all my money. So I'm one of the few people that actually maybe my rent should be paid, right? Because I can't go back to work.
So do people know what you do? You're a live sound engineer. You do
that's my
big
main
shows.
source of income is live sound engineering, right? Municipal events and private stuff.
Which brings us to the idea that bands too. There are a lot of bands that even bands that we know.
It's all messed
in the Albany region big bands who really relied on their income because they did a lot of big shows and wedding bands and stuff like that. That's all
And
done.
it's all seasonal here too, so a lot of that is like weddings. You know, a lot of these bands are doing 50, 60 weddings a summer, and last year they did 0.
Yeah.
So what happens to that? You're never going to make that up. So there again, they're mostly people that are self-employed in that aspect of it. So what happens to them? Where do they go? Like my thing, I'm never going to get that money back that I lost last year. I'm never going to get it back.
No.
So like if you're never going to get your rent money back that you didn't get last year.
Right.
It's not, they can pass a law and it works from here forward and they think they're going to fix things, but it's not like insurance where they're making people whole. They're not going to make anybody whole. The only people that are getting ahead are the people that aren't paying their rent.
Right.
Everybody else is still suffering.
Yeah, it's just terrible. I don't even know what else to say about it. It's terrible. This economy needs to get back open, and we've got all the components in place to do it. But Democrats in Congress are trying desperately to keep things down, keep things depressed, and keep things suppressed.
That's how it looks, objectively, from my perspective. That's how all these things look. Like they want control here, here, and here, and here. And I'm like, the whole idea of that is to not control that stuff and let people run their businesses and do what they do. That's where the profit comes from, right? Again.
Yeah. And they realize that they're at the end of this pandemic. They can't stretch the pandemic any longer.
Right.
We're at the
You're
point
right.
of it. And so now they have to come up with whatever they can. As ridiculous as it sounds, like this stupid free rent thing. But they're still trying to build the fear, and now, like we talked about earlier, they're implementing the racism component too. So if you don't support this, you must be a racist because, of course,
I think I want to know who's not working and why aren't they working and how is it different than it was before and how many of those people are the ones that aren't paying their rent. And I mean, if there's an actual problem, show us what the actual problem is. Don't make it into this huge overbearing regulation thing. Well, it's the same with the gun situations. You have all those big numbers, and then when you break it right down to something, there's 12 people. How is that? Why are we worrying about? on the other side of that, all these problems that they make. Oh, this happened in this town here, so we're going to put this on the news, and it's going to be front page news all across the country because something happened to 3 people in some town in the middle of nowhere. Not that shouldn't happen or should happen, but why is that what we're concentrating on as a country? Let's look at the real problems and try to find ways to make that better, perhaps. But passing laws and making regulations it doesn't help, and then you're stuck with it. So it's a lose-lose as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we're out of time, so it's a great place to end. All right, good. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
We're out. Thanks so much for watching The Loaded Mic on YouTube, Rumble, Simul TV, and Right America Media. You can also catch the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, whatever your favorite podcast app is, we're there. I'm Dan Wass, and the Second Amendment is not a privilege, it's your right.
I have seen God plan.
Ilhan Omar's free housing for everyone plan.
The Point of View, where we discuss the crucial questions that you have about the critical issues of our day from a biblical worldview. We believe that to be right about issues, you're going to have to be biblical about issues. Check out Point of View every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. and every Tuesday night from 8 to 8:30 right here on Right America Media Network at ramtv.live. Join us for the next episode of Point of View and let the Bible change your perspective.
What's all the commotion, my jurors?
Professor, everyone's talking about what's happening in Texas.
Is that what's on your minds?
Only fanatics are against abortion.
Oh, really? Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, the Dalai Lama? It would seem to me clear as daylight that abortion would be a crime. Mahatma Gandhi. Fanatics?
None of them were getting pregnant. Regardless, we should have the right to control our own bodies.
Yes, one should have the right to do whatever she wants with her own actual body. But let me ask you something. What happens when that body starts to interfere with another body?
You mean the rights of the fetus?
It is part of our own bodies.
All of your body parts share the same DNA, except the fetus. So the child, by definition, is not part of anyone's body, but their own.
But how can you say it's a life? It can't live without the mother.
Well, Dan, were you able to feed yourself without your mother the day after you were born?
Well, that...
Not even a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old can take care of themselves.
Hi, America. My name is Savannah Lynn, and I'm the host of a political commentary podcast called The Savvy Truth. If you love God, love your family, and you love this country, you can tune in at Right American Media on Facebook or at ramtv.live. This podcast airs 7 Eastern and 6 Central.
It is necessary to purge the establishment.
What she's suggesting that churches do, a focus on...
That's not necessarily a good thing to start with. They're stating it wasn't around when we needed the greatest generation of the 30s or 40s. It
happened before the election because there's so many Republicans that are afraid that their wrongdoing is going to...
It's unacceptable, and I'm not going to sit here, stay silent, and not call it out. I'm calling out the lies.
With rules for Thanksgiving. Who the hell is he to tell us what we're supposed to do?
Do they think that we are so stupid that we will not vote it?